It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. We have a great panel for you. Ian Thompson from the Registers here, Lisa Schmeiser from IT Pro Today, and also our great friend from Tech Republic, the man who may be the president of the internet, Jason Heiner. We're going to talk a lot about where the billionaires will go when everything goes to pieces and why it might not be such a good idea, why the future actually is pretty bright, and we're going to help a young man named Logan find work. It's all coming up next on Twit.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 674, recorded Sunday, July 8th, 2018. Go Dung, Beetles. This Week in Tech is brought to you by WordPress. Reach more customers when you build your business website at WordPress.com. Plans start at just $4 a month, and you can get 15% off any new plan at WordPress.com/twit. And by the Ring Video Doorbell. Stop crime before it happens and help make your neighborhood safer with Ring. Go to ring.com/twit and get up to $150 off a Ring of Security kit. And by Uber. Read about all the ways Uber is moving forward by going to uber.com/moving forward. And by Slack. Slack is a collaboration hub for work that makes sure the right people on your team are always in the loop, and key information is always at their fingertips. Learn more at slack.com. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news. I have gathered together once again a fine panel of tech journalists, starting with Ian Thompson from the Register.co.uk, where he is news editor. Always welcome here.
Always fun.
Your beat is pretty widespread. You cover everything from hacking to, what was it? Hacking election devices?
Oh, election, medical. I cover some space stuff as well. It's
all right.
We allow roving beats.
All right. Also from IT Pro, ladies and gentlemen, Lisa Schmeiser, IT Pro Today. She's the editor there. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, I'm an editor there. I do have a boss. I
always get the article wrong with you. An editor.
Mm-hmm.
The editor.
Yes.
At Tech Republic is here. Jason Heiner from CBS Interactive, editor-in-chief, even.
Pleasure to be here, as ever.
Do you are you ever tempted to say Great Caesar's Ghost or things like that? Copy,
yet.
Get in
Not
here.
Yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Boy, Lisa was looking at our rundown today of stories, and it all seems like tech gone wrong, and I hate to kind of focus on that. Did Elon Musk build the kid-sized submarine to rescue the soccer team in the Thailand cave?
He did, but they didn't end up needing it.
They didn't need it.
Yeah, they brought them out with two experienced divers on short cables between them.
And
each
they got
time.
them all out?
Well, last time I heard, it was six kids out.
Okay.
But it looks like it's a
Why
viable
would
rescue
you use
plan.
Human
the
skill and experience actually trumped a technological
I think
invention.
a kid-sized submarine sounds very neat.
Yeah.
All right.
I would have liked one as an 8-year-old.
This is why I love Elon Musk, because it's like, oh, I know.
Although, have you ever been in a submarine? They're actually pretty kid-sized already.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
No.
I thought he was going to be bore through the top of the mountain or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
with
thinking
one of their
that.
giant drills.
I thought that'd be good.
Apparently, it's like a
Underminer.
quarter of a kilometer. It's like half a kilometer down, and really unpleasant, drilling material. But it just, you feel for the poor. I mean, being down there that long.
Yeah.
On what was supposed to be a fun nature hike or sort of a fun hike for a birthday or something, it was just. And thank God so many professional divers just rushed in from around the world and helped.
If you've ever been caving, you know how dangerous it is, right? There it is. It's really more of a tube.
Yeah.
4 air oxygen ports, front and rear. That's kind of, this is where you got to kind of honor Elon for just being like, well, let's just do this.
Yeah.
Let's just solve it.
Hold my beer. I'm going
Hold
to
my beer.
I'm going to make a small child-sized submarine.
Or in
Hold my
Elon's case,
beer,
hold my
Musk.
kale smoothie with
Yeah. Speaking of Elon, there was a good article. We were all talking about it before the show by Douglas Rushkoff on Billionaires and how they've basically given up. They feel like it's over. I know you're all looking for it, so am I. It's over. We're going to We're going to, the human
The
race
event,
is gonna,
as they call
the
it.
event is going to happen.
Yeah.
This is an article he wrote in Medium called "Survival of the Richest." The wealthy are plotting to leave us behind. He was giving a keynote speech to investment bankers, and he did it because he was being offered about half his annual professor's salary, and it was going to be on the future of technology. But the Q&A ended up being, so what are you going to do when the event happens? The event could be anything from global warming finally crashing down around our heads to a zombie apocalypse. And it turns
To a
out,
nuclear warhead, of course.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
traditional.
which is ironic because many
The
of
old
them
school.
apparently are retreating to condos built in former nuclear silos.
Yeah.
You want to survive nuclear attack? Go to a nuclear silo.
Well,
Solutions, yeah.
it's interesting that they're looking at one event. How many of you guys have read William Gibson's The Peripheral?
Yes.
Yeah, I have it on my list. I
Yeah.
haven't read it
It's-
yet.
I haven't either.
One of the contentions, it's a book that involves time travel, but one of his contentions is that instead of one event, it's just going to be a series of small events that, if taken individually
Sure.
and with collective action, could have been shaken off. But because they happen in serial,
Every landslide is a series of
yeah.
small events.
exactly.
That end
So,
up burying you in mud or
so
snow.
even when you have this kind of thinking like, oh, the big event will happen and all that will be left were the billionaires and the Kansas nuke condos, I find it to be a very limited and blinkered vision of the future. Because honestly, if I had billionaire type resources and money, I think I'd bet on a different model.
Yeah, trying to sort out the problems before they start getting...
Exactly.
Well, Rushkoff says that they
Yeah.
have already concluded there's no point in doing that because the end is nigh.
But they've sold themselves this fantasy that they can somehow survive and emerge into a new high-tech society where all the poor people have been got rid of, and it's just, this core thing, and we'll build this utopia.
It's them in a herd of
Society
wild
doesn't work
horses.
like that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean...
Rushkoff said when the hedge funders asked me the best way to maintain authority over the security forces after the event, because that's one of the concerns.
Yeah.
You're barricaded in.
You've got
gotta
10
have
billionaires and 100 security guards. Guess who's going to be ruling the roost?
Hey,
You know?
you're going to eat that corn in a cup? Because I could, wouldn't mind. He said, I suggested their best bet would be to treat those people really well right now.
And they were like, nah.
They were amused, he writes. They were amused by my optimism, but they didn't really buy it. They weren't interested in how to avoid calamity.
Yeah.
We're too far gone. They're convinced for all their wealth and power, they don't believe they can affect the future. They're accepting the darkest of all scenarios and then bringing whatever money and technology they can employ to insulate themselves. If they can't get a seat on the rocket to Mars. Now, main reason I brought this up is his last sentence. He's writing, I guess he's working on a book called Team Human, which will be out early next year. But his last line is really the most important line. Being human is not about individual survival or escape. It's a team sport. Whatever future humans have, it will be together. I like that. But that's spoken as somebody who doesn't have enough money to buy a condo in a silo.
But some of the stuff they were talking about was completely bonkers, like putting shock collars on your security guards so that
Yes.
you got control on them.
Oh
or,
my God.
Or getting robot security guards.
So if you are
And you're like,
if you are the person with the skill who will, in theory, keep someone safe, if they come to you and say, "I'm going to put this shock collar on you,"
yeah.
Yeah.
are you
that's
really going to say,
definitely
"Oh,
not
yeah,
buying
totally.
in?
Yeah,
But
no.
wait a minute.
I mean, it makes even the worst HR
money-
department
You'll
today
get,
look
you'll
just
get
like...
to, you get to live with me in the survival condo, though.
Well,
As your slave with a shock collar.
better that than out there with the zombies.
Dude, if he's got the kind of skills to be security, he could be running the zombie horde. I
Well,
mean, a lot of these guys with the security props and chops are going to be like, why would I bother helping a hedge funder have a cushy life when I can become,
Well,
the
yeah.
king of
You're-
the Proud
you're not
Boys?
thinking-
And one less mouth to feed.
You're not thinking far enough down the
Yeah.
line. You totally think that,
Yeah.
and you say, put the collar on because you'll just later you'll take it off and then kill the guy. So you don't. It's just a way to. It's the entry price.
Yeah.
But you don't think that's going to last forever.
Plus, somebody has
Why
to
are we
maintain those
debating
collars.
this?
Someone has
know.
to maintain the collars, so you have to subvert them too. I mean, the problem with this whole premise is, if money is irrelevant, because again, after
How do you
escape,
pay people?
what is your inducement? Because you get to survive in a bunker with a shock collar, or again, you get to become head of the Proud Boys out on the plains.
So-
give them the silver spray paint and have them sign up now.
Well, I mean, but you see, we've seen this in history many, many times. I mean, the Praetorian Guard owned the Roman Republic, the
Yes.
Roman Empire, for the last couple of centuries of its life. They even sold it off on one stage to a third party. It's uneasy height lies the head.
I mean, there's a
bears the
reason they
throne,
kept sending the
crown.
Vikings out on raiding parties, is because if you had these guys out there, they weren't home threatening
Causing
your-
trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
Is that why?
Human beings are just built for fear.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. All
Yeah.
this time. I
Well,
didn't know
I mean,
that.
there was also a famine in Scandinavia at the time, so
Yeah.
you got lots of people with time on their hands.
That implies
But-
there was somebody staying at home while the Vikings were going out, going, "Thank God we got rid of those
Yeah.
dudes." They
Well,
were
the Chiefs,
trouble.
the Chiefs would keep
Skulls,
things
yeah.
going. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
but
they would maintain the systems of law and
Got
so
to read
on
up
and
on
so
my
forth,
Viking
but-
history. Apparently.
Actually, if you fancy a giggle, there's a very good show on Netflix called The Normans, which is I think it's a Norwegian comedy
The
show.
Norsemen,
all-
yeah.
are they-
oh.
The Norsemen, sorry.
Yes,
Yes,
it's hysterical.
It
The
is.
Normans is a different show about a lot of people named Norman.
Well,
But it's a good show.
It's about hapless French soldiers.
but this is just, there's a wonderful moment in the first episode where a slave is complaining about being enslaved. And the guy the Viking just walks up to him, punches him in the face, and then walks back up to his boss and he goes, "I'm unhappy with this force-based management system we have introduced." It's just...
I guess the last question I have about the Rushkoff piece, though, is this is a bunch of hedge funders who are like, nah, it's all terrible.
Right.
And I just wonder if this is some sort of occupational mindset, whereas if he were to sit in a room with 5 people who had loads of money from technology or 5 people who had loads of money from biotech or something else, if their mindset would be different.
It's true. Almost by definition, hedge fund managers are looking for the worst, right? That's
Yeah.
That's what they're there to.
But I mean,
prepare
Musk
for.
is doing important stuff with his money.
Yeah, but
Bill Gates.
But Musk
Yeah.
seems to be thinking of Mars as the escape hatch, right?
Well, I think Musk has identified as I mean, he's a big science fiction nut, and one of
Yeah.
the central problems identified in science fiction is you cannot build a long-term civilization on one planet, because sooner or later we're going to get hit by an asteroid, or we're going to get really bad volcanism or something. It's happened many times in the past, and entire species have been wiped out.
It's like having a
so if you can
backup.
get a self-support, it's kind of like your data backup. If you can get a self-supporting colony on Mars that can reseed the Earth, then we've got a chance of building a proper long-term civilization. Otherwise, we're just going to be going through the same thing again and again until a big asteroid
It's
strikes.
Have you
Distributed
re-
computing. It's cloud.
Well, it's
it's
John-
moving humanity to the cloud.
John Varley wrote about this in his sci-fi in the 1970s. He wrote a whole series of short stories about it, where the premise was that an alien race decided that humans were doing a terrible job with resources, and they preferred the dolphins, and they tried to kill off humanity. And so all of humanity ends up on the moon and then colonizes the planets from there. And the only reason it works, according to the short stories, is because they already had a small colony of people there who could then build and do that. So I can completely get behind Musk's contention that we need to distribute society centers across more than one
But I
planet,
like
because
Bill Gates' initiatives to try and sort things out here. You know,
He's an
malaria. He's
optimist.
tackling malaria.
He's an optimist.
He's tackling malaria.
And-
He's
and
tackling economic
He
disparity.
loves Steven Pinker, who has written 2 books now saying we are a much less violent civilization than we've ever been in the history of humankind.
Oh, by far. By the data,
Easily.
in terms of the data.
So
it's
why
not
all
even-
this pessimism?
because it sells stories. You know,
No,
the-
but
the
there's
old CNN.
definitely a pessimistic streak going
because
on.
people
right
like to think they'll be winning at the end of it. This is a way to try to.
Is it the human? I guess, when I said the end is nigh, that kind of harkens back to millennial thinkers for the last 2,000 years who've said, well, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Look, in a dystopic fiction, almost all of them are written from the perspective of somebody who's surviving it or has survived it. You never see. It's really rare to read one where the protagonist is going to die in the world-changing event. Emily Mandel St. John's Station 11 is the only one I can think of where a protagonist does die
So
as a result of it.
Humans are built for fear.
should it be my mission, our mission, to say, no, really, let's be honest, things are better than they ever have been. There's obviously problems. Let's work to make them better. But really, the future is bright.
So there's a great post on this. Melinda Gates retweeted it. It was from their. It was from their page.
I think Bill and Melinda have kind of personalize this whole point of view that let's make things better.
Yeah.
Not let's buy a condo in Kansas.
Should
With-
thank
with-
Warren
with-
Buffett
with-
for a lot of
it's
that.
from,
because
It's from July 2nd. The post is by Max Roser, who posts data all the time about the real data about what's sort of happening in the world. So he has memorizing these 3 statistics will help you understand the world, and the 3 are the first one actually is child deaths globally. In 1950, there were an average of 20 million a year. That's now down close to 5 million.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Right?
I mean, each individual one is still a tragedy for the family, but in the aggregate, it really
Exactly.
is a remarkable.
And the next one was the children per woman has halved since 1950. From
So that whole
5
notion that we're over populating the world.
We still have birth rate issues on a
In
regional
pockets,
scale
yes.
in pockets, but it's not where it was
Basically,
in the
once
50s
you
and
get-
60s.
We're
or
so
something.
much closer to what in my generation we called ZPG, zero population growth.
Yes.
Is that true globally or just in developed
That's
societies?
globally.
That's
Yeah.
global.
That is
I mean,
globally.
basically,
Yeah.
once you industrialize and once you educate and give women access
once you
to
give
education,
women access and reproductive control, once
Yeah.
culturally speaking, a culture embraces the idea that the woman it has the right to have charge of her fertility, then you see a lot of net growth in economics, education, and even in resource management. There's it's generally better for the environment too.
And the last one is the world population living in extreme poverty. In 1820, it was like almost 95% of the world. You see this chart? This
I have the
that
chart
we
right
have.
here, yeah.
And you look at now, it has dropped precipitously since about 1970 to the point that it's lower than it was in 1820.
yeah.
And
Even though the population has exploded.
exactly.
yeah.
So even though there are now 7 billion people, more than 7 billion people in the world, there are fewer people in poverty than there were when there were 2 billion
Yes.
people in the world, 1 billion.
I
1
wonder
billion.
if the challenge for some people is to be able to hold two seemingly conflicting ideas where poverty has gone down, but we still have to address it as a problem. It hasn't been solved
Right.
yet. So we can be like, hooray, there's less extreme global poverty, while also saying there are still an unconscionable number of people in the world who are suffering needlessly.
So I wanna
And it's
kinda-
hard for people to reconcile that.
But I also say as members of the media, do we not have an obligation? I think we've focused for a long time on the negative, and maybe we have an obligation, at least, let's say one time in 5, to mention that things are in fact better than ever before.
Oh, yeah.
And to a great degree, it's technology that propels that.
Yeah, it's
So-
the narrative, right? The narrative is that it's getting worse and worse and worse. If you read the news, you study these things. That's the narrative that you feel. Whereas you look at the data, and the data tells you a different story. That it's actually getting better and better and better. To the point, we still have a lot of work to do. It doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of work to do. Like, we have a ton of problems that we still need to solve.
Yeah, I mean, I can find other graphs on this site. This is our worldindata.org, for instance, global plastics production.
Yeah. Yes.
Skyrocketing.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about narratives, though, and another thing we've got to consider is you look at audiences today, and they have so many more ways of getting stories and then constructing their own narratives based on primary
Yes.
sources.
Isn't that kind of part of the problem? Is you can always cherry pick any fact to support any belief.
Sure.
And now it's become easier than ever to have a belief, a priori have a belief, and then find all the evidence to prove you're right.
Well, one of the things that we're probably going to have to address in a systemic way, either in education or otherwise, is teaching people how to discern narratives. How to learn how to trust sources, or ask, why are they telling me this story? What benefit is to them is there for telling me this story? Audiences are going to have to
Consider
develop
the motive.
Critical thinking.
and they didn't used to have to, because there were not that many outlets, and
And you trusted the outlet provider to actually.
There
provide
still
the
were
message.
motives,
Yeah.
though. I
Oh
mean,
no, certainly.
well, there
I mean,
were, but
listen, my old history teacher gave me one of the most. If I learned anything from school, it was this. It was my old history teacher said, if you read any historical document, you've got to ask yourself 3 questions: who wrote it? Why did they write it? And who paid for it to be written?
Yes.
And once you've got the answers to those 3 questions, you can actually take it seriously.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm gonna
this is
take-
something that needs to get taught in
I'm
schools.
going to take a pledge to start, at least as we talk about bad news, to make sure we balance it with good news. Although it's going to be a challenge in today's rundown. But
It's been a weird week because you've had Traitors Day this week, so everything's sort of slowed down and then come
wait a
back
minute,
up.
wait a minute. No, we call that Independence Day where I live.
We call it Ungrateful Colonials Day, but yes.
Are you saying make America great Britain again? Is that what you're saying?
Hey, listen, give it another 2 years. You guys might be asking for the Queen back.
Well, anyway.
I'm a big fan of Liz.
Yeah, and her idiot son, though, is...
No.
Yeah, maybe you're an idiot. No, he's not an idiot.
Oh,
he's
Prince
nice.
Charles.
Just because some of these ears stick out.
Two
you
short
shouldn't-
planks. Thick as 2 short planks.
Yeah,
is
I
the
mean,
phrase.
I'm sorry. Prince Charles has these weird ideas about ruling the country rather than just being what he's
see,
supposed
that's
to
a
be, which is
mistake.
the figurehead.
Although he may be, right in with the times. That seems to be the...
We're shifting
true.
to a more authoritarian time.
Another stat is that of especially in the past decade, democracy receding in lots of parts of the world,
Rapidly.
and,
Rapidly.
and freedom of the press also receding in many parts of the
Drastically
world.
in many...
Is there a correlation, or are there stats on
I bet they're
a wealth
related.
gap that may or may not be trending at the same time, because that's another thing that's been happening too, is you've had stagnant wages, especially in the U.S.
Certainly in
and
the
Do you
UK
think
as well.
income
much-
inequality leads to authoritarianism?
I'm wondering if anybody is tracking that, and I'm wondering if there is any sort of correlation to that. I mean,
There was some interesting research about the Brexit vote where they were trying to find out why people would vote against their own economic self-interest. And it basically came down to wages have been falling in the UK for the last 10 years since the Great Recession. And when a politician stands up and says, oh, you can't possibly leave the EU, otherwise it's going to get really bad economically. These
It's already
people
bad
have
for
been
them.
beaten for the last decade. What are they going to do? Say, well, do I trust this guy who screwed me over for the last decade, or do I trust the guy who's got a glib turn of phrase and some nice Facebook ads?
Yeah.
It's just, there's a definite correlation I can't help feeling, but I would like to see some research
Yeah,
on it.
I'd like to see numbers to support or not support, but the differential between a worker's average wage and a CEO's has never been bigger.
Yeah.
For example,
In this country particularly.
in this country especially, and you
See,
take
I
a look
tried to
at
lift it up, and you guys are bringing it right back down.
well, you take a look at the shrinking middle class and how jobs are sifting themselves out either into high earning or low earning areas, and that kind of economic inequality. When people feel as if there's no social safety net and there's no mobility, they're
Go
going
to Denmark, go to Finland, go to Sweden. These are countries where inequality is at the least and people are happiest.
Yeah.
You don't wake up in the morning thinking, if I get sick, am I going to get bankrupted, or can I afford my children's university education?
No, but they have solid social safety nets, and and it makes a big difference in terms of how people feel about the society they live in and the people they share it with.
They also
So-
have little upward mobility, though, at
Yeah.
the same time.
To prove our exact point, I have found a graph that shows that democracy, the blue line, is on the rise while autocracy is falling.
Do they break
Let's
that down
see.
by
I
region?
have no idea.
I'd be
Just a
curious
graph.
how that
and,
works.
and who? What's the
Oh,
source?
stop it.
No, seriously, what's the source? What's the source? What are the metrics?
Center for Systemic Peace,
How do they define?
a
How do they
research
define
institution
democracy?
in Virginia, evaluates the level of democracy for each country on a scale of -10, which denotes a tyranny like North Korea, and 10, which is a politically free society like don't spit your tea out, the United Kingdom.
Well, no, we're politically quite free.
Yeah,
limited
most
in
countries
some
fall
regards.
somewhere in between. In 2017, we were an 8 on the scale. France was a 9. I don't know. I think scoring.
Yeah, there are
Democracies.
so many variables in there.
How do you? I'd like to see the scorecard they kept, for example.
I'm just
How they define it.
I'm just pointing
I'm
out that
saying that-
whatever you want to
so
believe,
you know how I just
can find
talked
you
about-
a graph that proves.
Oh, yeah.
You know how I talked about interrogating the narrative? I think another thing that we're going to have to start talking about, especially with tech and AI, is interrogating the data and finding out how is
Which
it
data
collected?
set?
Who decided how to sort it? Who decided what was worth collecting and what was not? Why did they decide that? What is the point? And for things like this
Particularly as you move from sort of single-use AI to general AI.
Yeah.
That's the data sets used behind that, and the motivation of the programmers are going to be absolutely vital to seeing how that develops.
And if you've got AI in government, it absolutely has to be transparent where the data comes from, because what's policy? That's policy. That shapes people's lives. And, if your government
You guys, though, all talk about AI as if it's real, like it's going to happen. Do you have? I mean,
Is going to happen.
Yes.
is it?
Yeah.
It's
Do we have
already
any
happening.
evidence of that?
It's already happening in your office suites. This is actually how they're, I wouldn't say they,
I
but
wouldn't
this is-
call my office suite intelligent in any respect.
It's at the moment, you see, we're talking about single-use intelligence. The crossover comes when you go into general AI. You
Yes.
build a general AI system which can learn to do a lot of
But
things.
this has been my contention, is that what we call single-use intelligence is indistinguishable from algorithmic solutions. It's programming, which is not artificial intelligence. It's algorithms.
It's what we used to just call code.
Code, and it's become the fashion to say everything is
Is
AI.
AI.
Yeah, well,
We
the
clearly
AI washing
see
is
machine learning informing some processes.
Yeah,
that's for sure. I don't know if you'd call that intelligence. That's just that that a machine can, in a way, create its own code from a data set, right? So that's a step. But I wonder. I think there's quite a big leap between that and general artificial
Huge
intelligence.
leap. There's a lot of, so I cover this a lot because of covering business technology, and talk to a lot of people that are working on AI, and their frustration is not that it's too smart, right? It's that it's so dumb and they cannot get it to do the things that they want it to do. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't take the leap of like, it will get better, right? The data will get better. One of the biggest problems is if you want to have AI, you have to have a really great set of disciplines and organization around your data, because that's what and most of the world doesn't have that.
Well,
right?
and to that point, I often think that we have fetishized the notion of AI to the point where we're starting to trust so-called AI to do things that they can't do. Face recognition. There's a story.
I'm so sorry about this.
Well,
story.
the face recognition thing is interesting too, because there's parameters. Microsoft recently had to come out with a blog post where, by the way, we now recognize white people.
Well, there's a big
they recognize
black
white people. They were saying they now recognize black people.
Always been able to recognize white
Sorry,
people.
I completely. Wow, I misspoke there.
But that's
No, but
is
they
that
were like,
because
"La-da-da-da-da-da."
is that because they trained it? Oh, I'm sorry, we're getting.
Well, I think the
some
data
noise.
sets they were using were largely on white people, and therefore,
So it's good at that. That's
But the
machine
fact
learning.
is the people who built that in didn't notice that. Like they just had an inherent bias, and this is why we're going to have to start looking at all of these data sets and asking what's being left out and why.
Here's
or
the,
what are your,
It's
what are
also
your
raised the
foundational
possibility that if you're
assumptions?
trying to build a specific kind of AI, you would deliberately limit the data sets that you use to get the result that you want.
Kathy
to get
O'Neill
back
has
to-
written
to
this.
get-
Her weapons of math destruction.
to get
is all
back
about how
to-
the algorithm can be used
Because it
against
always
you.
comes back to sci-fi. There's an author named Dennis Danvers who wrote a book, and I can email you some recs because he does really because a lot of his earlier books dealt with what happens when people can upload themselves into the World Wide Web, what happens to the physical
I
world.
am really looking forward to that.
But in one of the books, Dennis Danvers writes, people who are planning on colonizing Mars actually do create a deeply racist AI to help them out. And the challenge of one of the protagonists
His name was Zoe.
It was a girl, and the challenge of one of the protagonists was to try to reason with this AI and explain to them why their data set was flawed. When the AI is like, "No, you don't understand. I'm an AI. I'm much smarter than you anyway." And it took up a good portion of the novel. It was fascinating.
Is the Independent a reasonable newspaper in the UK? I have to ask you the source.
It used to be a broadsheet. It's now online only, and it's largely reasonable.
It's in between the Guardian and the Daily Mail. Is the Independent?
Kind of, yes, although I would put the Daily Mail so far on the egregious end of the scale.
In between the Washington Post and the National Enquirer.
The one advantage of the Daily Mail is that it's very absorbent, but apart from that, it's just
Useful for a spill. So the Independent has this story, Scotland Yard.
Yeah, we covered this as well, and it's painful.
They were doing a pilot, at least, that's to their credit. This was a test. This wasn't rolling out. But as we know, the UK has security cameras everywhere, right?
Oh,
you
yes.
can't walk around London without being on camera.
We are one of the most CC. If you want to have a good, if you're a geek and you have a good time in London, just stand there in the middle of a street and look round and count how many cameras you can find. And if you can find less than 5, you're really
any
not trying.
time. That's amazing.
Yeah, they even have light poles with microphones on them.
So the Metropolitan Police, that's the same as Scotland Yard?
Metropolitan Police is London's own police force. So
I
it's
just
kind
have
of
to
like the
say the name
NYPD.
President.
So confused. They have been doing a trial over a few months across 6 locations in London.
And hasn't it been successful?
They have been using face recognition. What they have is a database of violent offenders. We're only going to use violent offenders. We are going to scan all the faces of the people who walk past the cameras and search for those violent offenders. We've got lots of safeguards. If the technology generates an alert to signal a match, police officers on the ground review the alert and carry out further checks to confirm the identity and make sure that it's not a false positive. All alerts against the watch list will be deleted after 30 days. Faces in the database that did not generate an alert are deleted immediately. They're not keeping it.
The success rate was
0.
actually 2%.
Well,
98% false positive, which, let's face it, is worse than random.
Yeah.
Only one person, according to observers, was stopped after being identified. Of course, it was an African-American male. That wasn't African-American, black male. It's in England.
No, yeah.
Right?
Afro-Caribbean or African or whatever. We
don't know
don't make
what
these
words to
kind of,
use.
you're basically, you're black British.
A dark person, which we know face recognition doesn't work very well with. So the man took his rucksack off, had his pockets turned out by police. He handed over, shocking, an Oyster transport card for use on the Underground. the officers talked to the man, said, no, he's not your guy, and they let him go.
But the police said they were perfectly fine with this. And really, if you were as a police officer walking down the road and you get dragged off to one side, as has happened to me on one occasion, and basically searched by the side of the road. This was terribly embarrassing. I was coming out of Liverpool Street Station and a police dog jumped at me because it thought I was carrying drugs.
Oh, dear.
We're on our way to meet my wife's friends for the first time. So I'm hauled off to the side, standing there like that, being patted down. And my wife goes and meets a friend. It's like, where's Ian? Oh, he's over there being patted down by the policeman. Total false positive. But this is even worse than the facial stuff.
The Met say that he was given a leaflet.
Oh, well, that makes it perfectly all right then.
So 0 arrests.
Yep.
Which maybe means that no bad guys walked by the cameras.
Yeah, or it could mean that the software is so bad. I mean, the Chinese are apparently doing very intensive stuff on this.
Oh, do you think because it's racially more uniform, the Chinese facial recognition works better?
I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I'd be curious to know what the panel, whatever.
There's a number of different ethnic groups across China, though, so they've got their own. They're going to have their own challenges in terms.
Yeah, they've got
of
the Magyars and
definitely.
Yeah, but it's okay if we arrest a Uyghur because they're Muslim.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, and I don't think any statistics coming out of China are to be trusted anyway.
No, but I mean, the UK
bit of the old Soviet stats padding.
Yeah. But they do claim several arrests using face recognition software.
But I mean,
and a lot of jaywalkers apprehended too.
Maybe that's just a very effective PR move too, because if you convince people the tools work and have consequence, then it doesn't matter whether or not they actually do.
Self-censorship becomes the norm. And
Yep.
Well, I do have some good news. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to cheer everybody up. But first, a word from our sponsor, bringing you the good news since the early 2000s, WordPress.com.
Oh, bless
everybody, you know what's great about WordPress? Whenever I talk about my blog, leolaporte.com, it's on WordPress. My kids' blogs, we've set them up now. They're on WordPress. Every time I talk, people go, oh, I love WordPress. It's just universal. It's probably why 30% of the whole internet, 30% of the web worldwide is running on WordPress.com. This just in, 31%. Now, I just want to say, when we started doing these ads, it was 29%. So something's going on. Something's going on. WordPress is the best place to create your website, whether it's a business, your personal site. It's easy. It will look like you. It'll share your voice. It'll be your work, your way. If you don't have your own website, you don't control your presence on the internet. You've got to have at least that, and WordPress makes it easy. You don't need to do any coding, no design. WordPress gives you all the tools you need to get your site up and running. Their customer support team is there. WordPress offers powerful e-commerce options ranging from a simple and effective buy button to a complete online store, so it's great for e-commerce. And it's very affordable. You start at $4 a month. And I have the business plan because you get a lot of additional features built in SEO, social sharing, so people can spread the word about your business on their social sites, on their Twitter and Facebook. There's also specialized plugins, hundreds of them. I use, for instance, the Google AMP plugin, which means my site loads lickety-split on mobile. They have the best anti-comment spam engine in the world at Kismet. It is really, it's mature. It's been there. It's good stuff. WordPress.com/twit. If you go there right now, you'll get 15% off any new plan purchase. WordPress.com/twit. 15% off. 31% of the net runs on WordPress.
Wow.
Congratulations. They keep going. That's a good sign when that's going up.
Can we
Thank
do
you,
one
WordPress.
follow-up, Leo,
Yes.
to the
more bad news?
This one's not bad news. You know, one place that computer vision, if we want to call it that, and AI is working, or in the early prototypes, Amazon Go, right? And so one of the stories that we're looking at covering is Amazon announced, or not announced, but the word is that they're about to open a second automated store in Seattle, right? Where you go in.
I love these stores. You don't have to check out.
Exactly. No checkout. You go in.
Have you used this?
I haven't. But obviously we've covered it. We've sent reporters, and it's worked well. You go in, you have to identify, I'm here, it's me, you have my information, right?
Yeah.
But once you're in there, whatever's in your basket, whatever's in your cart, it scans. It also knows, oh, you got that macaroni and cheese, and then you put it back, so now it's going to send you ads for macaroni and cheese, but that's pretty smart, right? So ultimately, this is a place where the sort of machine learning and the algorithms are good enough that Amazon is moving forward with. The report was that they originally had over 200 stores in the U.S. planned to.
They only have
to do
one
this.
so far. This will be the second.
The second. This one's bigger.
I want to go to this.
But yeah,
We had Sam Mashkovich on from Ars Technica. He went in.
Yeah.
He actually tried to shoplift. No, but
I admire his moxie.
Yeah, he had a coat.
It seems like you want to see how easy it is to steal those.
Took some, like a Odwalla off and put it under his coat, and they charged him for it. So,
So here's something I'm curious about, because if you assume that this model takes off, how does it change people's conception of money and how they spend it?
well, isn't that a problem when you're not being charged? It doesn't feel like you spend
Well, exactly.
anything, right?
So
you just walk out the door. It's
because I'm
And therefore you spend more.
right.
Well,
I'm sure that's Amazon's
I'm reminded,
plan.
for example, of when I was in college, my student ID also doubled as my dining hall pass, and I had so many dollars that I could spend per week on meals. And every time we swiped it, you'd see how much money you had left, and so you do the calculations in your head. And but it felt much different, and I was inclined to be more careless, especially on weekends, than if I had to actually hand over cash.
No,
And-
I'd stayed off credit cards for a long time after getting a massive bill after getting it the first time, thinking, this is great. It's like getting stuff
so
for free.
what
and then
I'm
the bill
really
comes.
curious about, and I'm sure they're collecting the data, and I'm sure Amazon's collecting the data that they won't share, but what I'm really curious about is how people's shopping habits would alter in a post-currency world or in a post-currency retail environment.
I'm not sure that it would change that much, honestly, because you're going to get that alert right away. You were just charged, $37.92 for your order.
Yeah.
And so in some sense, you may be more hyper connected to it, or less if you don't look at it or you swipe it and dismiss it. But you could also, these systems are smart enough to now to automatically budget for you and show you spent this much on food this month, you spent that much last month, you're up 50%. Like you need to, and then you're like, oh, whatever, I shouldn't have gotten those whatevers.
At some point,
that party.
So if I were Amazon, at some point I'm looking to buy Mint or something similar so that you can offer a one-stop shop where it's like, hey, we offer a way for you to monitor your spending. We'll make suggestions on how to spend smarter. They'll tie it into proprietary Amazon and Whole Food only specials where you're like, look, you can save 20% on your grocery bill this month. Here are your trends. Here's how you can save 20% just by using Amazon Subscribe and Save and Amazon Grocery.
So some of these mobile first banks, there's some of these ones that they're completely mobile, right? You literally don't have access to even go into the bank. And as a matter of fact, Chase just opened one. It's called Fin. We wrote about it this week. This past week.
Oh, I remember.
And it's doing some of this exact same stuff. It's going to help you save, right? So and it's also going to help you budget and those kinds of things. So I do think that, because the ultimate deal is being accountable to it, right? Being accountable to yourself, being accountable to whatever your budget is. And there is the opportunity that digital tools could make it better. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But
And
that
if
does have
Amazon
that-
is smart, they'll goose that experience for perceived benefits. I mean, the whole point to Amazon Prime, for example, is they like to hammer home how much you're saving by spending $120 a year for the privilege of shopping a whole lot and watching streaming videos. And so this would be a great way.
Can I point out one thing, though? This whole conversation about Amazon Go we never once mentioned all the people who will be out of work because of this.
Yeah.
This is, if you're talking about AI and people's jobs being replaced by AI,
That's the rub.
this is it.
Yeah.
Although what they say, and there's some truth to this, is that their plan is anyway, and part of this is PR because they know that this is bad mojo. Their plan is that they're going to take those people and not get rid of the cashiers, but they're going to make more because there are areas that are rising in demand, like pre-prepared meals and things like that. They're going to do more of that because they have higher margins on that. And so you have somebody working on that, they make better margin. It's they're going to take those people they would have employed as cashiers. They're going to have them. They still have to stock things, right? They still have to. They want to do
Until
more
the
of this,
robots come in.
until the robots come in.
I wonder if it'll be a net
Prepared
zero.
meals.
Well-
It is the question. Is it a net zero?
And frankly, there aren't many entry-level jobs for kids getting into the workforce. Bagging groceries is one of the. It used to be flipping burgers. We were talking about this a few weeks ago. That's where I started, and a lot of people started. But now, no, that's teenagers don't get those jobs anymore. But I see a lot of teenagers bagging groceries. That's gone.
My first job was as a shelf stacker in the local Gateway
And
supermarket.
Amazon's not notorious for being a great employer either, right?
True.
Well, no, this is the sick thing about their stores, though, because they pay some of their warehouse staff so poorly that they have to get food stamps just to survive, which means we're subsidizing Amazon. Yeah. And then they cannot use these same food stamps in Amazon's own stores. It's a massive two fingers to their own staff.
But now, of course, if this technology, is it going to all be Amazon owned, or will they sell this technology to other companies?
That's the question, right? Because others are saying that they're going to do it.
Walmart,
too,
I'm sure, wants to do this.
But they want to sell it as a solution to others.
One of the classic revenue streams for any company is when they license their technology and then sell support for licensees. And
on the other
at some
hand,
point, Amazon's going to want to do that.
Amazon's traditional mode of operation is not doing that, but just swallowing everybody whole and making it all Amazon, right?
Not necessarily. Look at AWS, right? They took they make more money. They are really
it's still Amazon. They're not licensing it to somebody else.
But they're licensing.
They're empowering other people.
A lot of what they've learned in e-commerce, they now license.
Do you think Whole
scale.
Food? Do you think this would work in Whole Food and Amazon Go?
They said no. Whole Foods is a premium experience.
Steve just said the words, which is this is a customer who expects a really high touch, high needs environment.
And in fact, if anything, you make Whole Foods less of a grocery store and more of an experience.
Yeah.
Well,
you make it like Nordstrom, except with kale.
Classes.
That's why they make it so.
Say that again.
You make it like Nordstrom, except with kale.
Exactly. I thought you said. Okay.
It is.
I'm sorry, sir. That kale it's not right for you. Maybe I can get a shade of red.
Well, this is with the retail sector that deals with home goods and things like that. Sir Latab has actually made a name for itself by offering classes and skills workshops and things like that. And I remember taking a couple of those, and they do a really nice, really smooth upsell at the end of the night too, where once you're done learning your knife skills, or once you're done cooking with an editor from Cooks Illustrated, both which are classes I took, they hand you a coupon for 10 to 25% off, good for just that night, and they let you wander about an empty store.
I've taken those classes.
And it's a luxurious experience.
This is a big part of the future of retail. So we did a special report by ZDNet Tech Republic. We just released last week on the future of retail and sort of how data, AI, and IoT are going to play a big part of it. And it is a lot of these kinds of things that are transforming retail from a sort of experience where you're just there to buy the thing you want to sort of embracing showrooming, to embracing a experience like when you go to the Amazon homepage and it knows the kind of things that you want and it presents them to you. Retail is doing a lot of the same things. So you can find that on ZDNet. You can also download it as a PDF, the report, if you're interested on Tech Republic.
We've been actually talking about
I write about that.
You know, as you see Amazon first disintermediate and closed bookstores all over the country.
Yeah.
And then, you see this incremental loss of brick and mortar business. We've been talking a lot about that, how the downtowns can be revitalized by experiential shopping. You have to, if somebody just wants something, you just do it online. So there's got to be some reason to go into a store. Movie theaters have exactly the same issue. Movie ticket sales are down year after year after year.
There was an interesting thing on this about toy stores, of all things.
Toy stores. There's an interesting story.
There are some toy stores which are now deliberately building. It's not just you can get a bigger range of toys on Amazon, but you can't get people explaining hands-on to the kids, talking to them to design which kind of toys and games they might like.
So my downtown has several different retailers, which should be by all rights getting murdered. And the toy store that we have, they will actually buy back toys, which makes them popular with parents.
Right.
But they have a library of toys out in front of the store for children to play with.
Yeah.
Which has made it great for people slowing down.
That's the one big advantage that
foot traffic.
Main Street has over the internet.
Yeah.
I still
the baby supplies store in town. The baby supplies store in town has workshops they do on family legal matters. For example, here's how to set up your estate. They will do free car seat installations for you. They'll help you set up. And the bookstore that we have has events all the time where they've got authors who come in, or they'll have reading groups come in where you can knit and read at the same time and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's bringing in this really social aspect and making people feel like they're not just shopping, they're having an experience, or they're not just shopping, they're doing something interesting. That's really gone a long way towards keeping it perking.
Now, we live in Northern California, the three of us. Jason, you live in
Louisville, Kentucky,
I'm just wondering if this kind of precious little store is a Northern California phenomenon, or is this global? Is this or national?
might
Yeah, if you look at the data, so Larry Dignan on ZDNet's written a lot about this, and retail has actually not been doing bad as a sector. What's doing in and why there's so many places going under is not that the retail is evolving. It's got a long way to go.
There
as we
were
talk
too
about in the
many
report.
stores in America. What I thought was the
Yeah.
problem was there were too. there were
actually-
too many brick and mortar outlets and too many stores.
It's
Well,
not-
for that
the
matter, there's
problem-
also too many restaurants. There's too many hospitals, and we've got to get rid of all these
We were
cops.
reading a couple of articles about
It
that.
is.
many
There-
stores?
Some are overbuilt, but the biggest problem actually is debt. So
Yes,
this
that's
over
what
the
you're
past
seeing in
10
malls,
years,
isn't it? That's
Yeah.
where you
Yes.
see the
Yeah.
over the
Yeah.
past 10 years, private equities bought a lot of these stores like Sears and
Burlington Coat Factory.
Kmart.
There's a
Toys R
whole
Us.
bunch of
Yeah.
examples.
Was
Even in my
murdered
industry,
this year because of the debt.
that's what
They
happened
do
to
really
Clear
shady
Channel. Clear
things.
Channel
Yeah.
it borrowed heavily to buy every radio station in the country. Yeah, sure, now they own every radio station, but they also own $20 billion in debt.
And they
they're
do
getting
really
strangled.
shady things. Yeah, they put all this debt on these companies, and then like in the some of these cases, what they'll do is they'll take the assets. One of their biggest assets is actually the real estate they own. Right? They'll take those the real estate, they'll spin it off as a separate company, holding company, which now they own, and they'll rent it back to that company. Right? So now that company, which wasn't paying anything because it owned the building, is now paying an exorbitant amount in rent, and the company goes under, and they're incented to start closing these stores and then rent them out to others.
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but it sounds like this is a structural problem with the way we do finance in the United States.
Oh,
It is.
Is
It
it?
is.
And it sounds related to the crash of 2008 and the way we were.
No, I mean, I'm sorry.
sounds related to the 80s junk bond. It seems like that's really the problem in this country is financiers and the way they're doing business.
And regulation hasn't caught up to
Put
it
them
yet.
all in
It
the
will.
Nick
Worse,
silos.
regulations going the other direction.
Put them all in the survival bunkers, restart the economy.
They have all the money. Wow.
You see, it didn't used to be like this in the US. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt broke up, some of the major
Famous
monopolies.
trust bust.
Yeah.
Standard Oil got broken up.
Yeah.
There was another move in the 1930s
It's
to
not
get this
trusts,
stuff.
though, that's the problem. It's not monopolies. It's junk bonds.
It's a lack of
well,
financial
it's-
regulation.
Yeah,
We're
it's
I-
always
it is.
doing
It's a lack
that.
of financial regulation.
1970s, we've gone through this thing of we must go for a totally regulation-free market, and markets only work through regulation because otherwise people cheat. And we're seeing this again.
Toys R Us, perfect example. And a lot of people say, Toys
It was
R Us
doing fine.
was
It had
killed
too
by
much debt.
Amazon.
It was
It
doing
wasn't
fine.
killed by Amazon. It was doing fine.
Yeah.
They had billions in dollars in debt. And where did all that debt come from? Just overexpansion?
Well, no, because the people that bought them out
Well,
loaded them
leveraged
up
it.
with debt to
Heavily
buy them
leveraged.
out, then paid themselves fat management fees on top of that,
Yeah.
Exactly.
and just destroyed the company. But hey, they made a profit at the end of the day, so what do they
They
care?
came out smelling like roses,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they killed a company that was actually doing pretty well.
An iconic American company as well.
Yeah. And you're seeing this happen again and again. So while retail has a lot to figure out, and they are actually moving pretty well, and they're still in demand, and they're still doing good stuff, and they are still building an experience for the 21st century that a lot of consumers are still responding to, even in the face of Amazon.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of this fundamental kind of financial stuff that's actually doing them in.
Yeah, these kind of shenanigans are really bringing a lot of healthy companies low. And yes, it makes for a small number of people quite a lot of money. But at the end of the day, their pension funds get raided. People are unemployed, so we've got to pay for them. They either pay lousy wages, so we've got to pay more in terms of food stamps.
Is it
It's
Wall
just
Street versus Main Street? As it's
Wall
typically
Street versus everyone, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the best way of putting it. Is it's Wall Street, and again, it comes back to that long future mindset versus short-term profit, where the moral, as far as these companies and people who make money for a living are concerned, their moral imperative is to get the greatest shareholder value for the dollar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have deliberately decoupled profit making from a larger infrastructure, economic, or social context, because that doesn't serve what they consider their greatest value to be.
There was a marvelous cartoon, I think it was last year, of a man in a very ragged business suit sitting around a campfire in a cave surrounded by children going, well, yes, society collapsed, but for many years we created great shareholder value.
Yes, and that's what. But that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just misaligned priorities, right? It's when you have sort of people, consumers, workers, best interests misaligned with the shareholders, and that's when you have these disconnects, which are by and large hurting working class people.
Does technology have a role,
problems.
good or bad, to play here? Can technology help solve this, or is it Amazon going to pick the bones and?
Well, traditionally, technology has never really been that great a job creator.
No.
I mean, when you think when the first office suites came out in the 70s and 80s, that decimated an entire class of secretarial workers who were no longer needed because management were expected to type their own letters. At the same time, it's been
By the way, that has not been an improvement. Okay, go on.
Well,
historically speaking, almost any time any technology is introduced, there's going to be a job loss category. There's the story where reportedly somebody came up with a knitting machine during Queen Elizabeth's time, and she actually prohibited it being built and used.
Preserve the knitters.
Yeah, she wanted to make sure the knitters still had their
but
labor.
that never works in the long term. This is the problem. So
technology always advances, and then technologists would say, yes, but we create jobs in new sectors.
Well,
it
they
does.
still haven't figured out how to solve the problem of persuading people or offering people who lost their jobs.
I was going to say, if you take a
compelling
50-year-old coal
alternative.
miner, are you going to be able to trade in as a web designer?
Well, and the thing is you mentioned coal miners, and that's a great example because there were federal job retraining programs in place, and the participation rates have been incredibly low because as far as the miners are concerned, they don't want to do anything else.
They want their old jobs back.
They want their old jobs and their old wages back, and they don't want to have to start in a new division, in a new skill set at entry-level wages.
I heard one analysis of the 2016 election that both candidates lied. One candidate said, we're going to give you your jobs back. One candidate said, good news, we're going to retrain you, you're going to get better jobs. And in both cases, they were lies. But one was more palatable than the other. And I guess that's kind of true because the coal industry, as far as I can see, is not coming back.
Oh, it's dying on its backside. I mean, it's just like trying to bring back the steam engine.
These two things do create new jobs, so it is important to remember.
Yeah, the solar industry is now growing.
But think of it even this way, like at a fundamental level.
It's different people, so somebody's out of work.
Well, sometimes. In AI, for example, what AI relies on is big data, right? One of the dirty little secrets about big data is that the companies that are spending the most on it, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, the data to the point of like the algorithms aren't smart enough to handle gray areas and ambiguities, right? So they're hiring armies of people to actually sort.
I thought that's what Amazon's mechanical Turk was for pennies. You could teach the AI how to identify different things,
how to label things, how to resort data, and all of that thing. So it's created this demand for new kinds of labor. Now there are problems with that labor too. We've written a story about that, a long form, an investigative piece on it. Some of these people are treated pretty badly, and there's problems with it. But the bottom line is some people are calling them the blue collar jobs of the digital age, right? You can pick up, be trained very quickly and start learning how to whatever.
And at least you don't have to leave the house.
And you don't have to leave the house.
I mean, the downside is you're talking to the blue collar jobs. You don't have union protection like blue collar jobs in the 20th century
look at people
had.
who work at Amazon warehouses. I mean, there's a lot of bad jobs. They've created a lot of bad jobs. But now Logan's sitting here. How old are you, Logan? 11? So in 10 years, Logan's going to hit the workforce. Pretty impossible to predict what 10 years from now.
I'd say computer security is a pretty solid
train in computer security, Logan.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, what advice do you give kids? I mean,
80% of the jobs in like 2025 haven't been created yet. That was a recent study. So what are you going to train for, right? Well, we shouldn't be training people for specific, roles of things. We should teach them how to, critical thinking.
You have to do the skills.
You have to teach the sort of more uber skills, which is actually likely to create a demand for the liberal arts education that we
just have to figure out how to fund it.
I would say even more important than that, meta skills like how to live in an economy where the jobs
change every 5 years.
So I have a friend in higher education, and he said that recently they had a workshop where somebody came in and said, what you need to start telling your undergraduates is, so far as we can forecast, the future is going to be volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So what you need to do,
It's just gonna suck.
you need to develop
But
the
it's not gonna be
skills.
boring.
But you need to develop the skills to deal with extremely complex and ambiguous situations
But
all the
you
time.
do
You
need
won't
What's
be in the
interesting
same
is
boring
we
job
as
for 20
parents
years. So.
are raising kids like Logan with our mindset of how things were,
No.
what
You
we
see,
did, and
I
that's
saw a
not what the world's
No,
going to
I
be.
have
I saw
an-
a classic
I
example
have a
of this on the way
7-year-old,
into
and
work.
basically
Same thing.
all I'm telling her now is the only constant you're ever going to have is that things will change. So your job is to figure out how to cope with change and
That's
how
probably
to
right.
how to
Yeah.
anticipate
Which
it,
is
how to
why
react
they
to
should
it.
play more video games, spend more time on Twitter, and
But
I
saw
have
a
a
class-
19-year-old and
oh,
an
sorry.
11-year-old. Similar
Oh, right,
thing.
19,
Yeah.
11.
more
It's like,
Snapchat.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a classic example of this I was walking to work on Thursday morning and just watched a young girl's hopes and dreams get crushed on the street.
Oh.
Because it was
Jeez Louise.
adorable little 4 or 5-year-old walking with her dad, presumably to school. And we were standing at the traffic lights waiting for them to change. And he was like, "So what do you want to be when you grow up?" And she went, "I want to be one of those. I want to be a driver." And he went,
Oh, dear.
"Oh, well, no, when you grow up, there won't be drivers. You just get in the car and say," and her face just fell. And it was one of the most heartbreaking things
Not
you've
a
ever
time
seen.
for truth, Dad.
No, my daughter says she wants to figure out how to get rid of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and I was like,
Hey, that's a
"Well, you will have
great-
employment,
yeah.
my love."
Good. Good. Yeah, because I guarantee you 10 years from now, that will be around.
Yeah, I was like, "That's a problem to be solved. So pick a problem and solve it."
My kids both are getting out of college. And
Yeah.
it's even now, which is less change than it will be when Logan gets out of college. I wonder, should kids be even taught to go to college? I mean, is that a reasonable... Don't listen to me, Logan's parents. Is that a reasonable ambition now for...
The one thing I've told my niece, who is a college sophomore going into college junior, is that college is a very safe place to experiment and fail.
Good. Also a very expensive place
Yeah.
to experiment.
Very.
It's a very, it's and I'm saying that from a position of
And
privilege
I would
where
say
you can
if you
afford
have
it,
to
so,
borrow
yeah.
to do it, don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I see people with crushing debt.
Pick parents. who
Yes,
can
I was
afford
lucky. I came from a socialist country where the
Yeah.
government paid me to go to university and cover my tuition fees.
Exactly.
So, and it paid off in the long run because people got better paying jobs and they pay back into the state. But over here, I've got friends who've got $100,000 in student debt. That's a modern day
Yeah.
serfdom.
It is.
It's just
Because the interest is so
It's
high.
been
you
the Wall
cannot
Street
get
Journal.
ahead.
The Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
once referred to it as a reverse dowry,
Yeah.
where it's actually affected people's personal lives. Where once they find out that what their prospective partner has in terms of student loans, they'll rethink the
So
relationship.
I do
Logan,
know some 20-year-olds.
Be cool, stay in school.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Oh yeah.
Car designer.
That will
You know
always-
there'll be no
always
drivers, though, so you can eliminate the steering wheel, the gas pedal, the brake, that you don't need to worry
Yeah, but then
about
you
that.
save all that weight and you get a much snappier car.
Actually, Logan-
You know, Logan, there's going to be a real demand for figuring out how to design autonomous vehicles for adverse conditions
Logan?
like under-maintained rural roads,
You're going to be a living room
agricultural
designer,
areas.
Logan. That's what you're going to be, a
Yeah.
living room designer.
You could figure out you could figure out a set of conditions to design your vehicles for. Like, I'm going to design vehicles that are self-driving that handle rural roads.
But I think there's a lot to be said for, one of the areas which actually is going to hold up quite well is going to be the trades, the plumbing, the electricians. So, I mean, I've got a friend who's a welder, another friend who's a plumber, and they make serious money.
My stepfather has a master's in education, and he's also a master electrician, and he found that a lot more fulfilling than teaching. And he's technically retired, but he's always finding projects to monkey around with.
Well, the
And
demand
it's amazing how
for these
that-
jobs, the demand for trade jobs, in all over the country, of course, but in the where I live in the Midwest, it's really high because so many people have gone. University education at the public universities is cheap, and so there's just a lot of people with liberal arts degrees. That there's not
good
enough
bad
jobs, right? There aren't enough jobs. Now that doesn't mean I do think in the long run a lot of what they learn, how to think and learn and critical thinking, all that will come in handy. But still the bottom line is, to your point, Ian, is just that there's so many of those jobs open for skilled trades that because they haven't been viewed as the kinds of jobs that people, tell kids to go and think about, right, for a couple decades now. And so there's such a dearth of people that can do them. And so the demand for them is way up, right? So the compensation is also way up as a result.
I would love to see a national infrastructure. You know how we had the WPA in the 1930s? Yeah. I would love to see a similar national infrastructure initiative like that now, where we could train people in the trades and have them work on bolstering our infrastructure, on learning plumbing, on learning
guess you'll always need
construction, on
plumbers
learning
and carpenters and electricians,
100%.
Yeah. And if we had a job training corps that built these skills out and it was regionally distributed, then you wouldn't have areas.
Skilled machinists. Yep. Coders. Will we always need coders? Maybe that's not a good job.
No, because eventually you're going to teach the machines how to code themselves. All code is a set of rules that you are operating within. And
should
when you
be looking for jobs that can't be done by automation? I guess you should. If you're 11.
Yeah.
It's difficult to know what those are going to be, though.
It is.
Any job that requires standardized, consistent results across a discrete data set is going to be automated. So what you need to do is learn how. No, what you need to do is learn how to critically think.
Even a doctor and a lawyer.
Radiologists are right to be
being replaced.
Yeah, they're right.
Do you remember when being a linguist was a golden career because you're going to make so much money? That's
automatic
translation. 5 years from now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still
tax preparation.
Anything where you have to understand context, nuance, history, ambiguity, sort through those things. Those are the areas that humans are better than machines and likely will always be better than machines.
Can everybody do that, though? Or, I mean, I don't...
You have to teach people how to think. And you've actually managed to hit one of the challenges that we have in our modern education is that we're so underfunded with such big classes, and we've relied on standardized tests as a benchmark for learning instead of having smaller, better funded classrooms.
We're training robots for an era that we won't need. Well, one thing we don't need is robots.
Yeah.
People who memorize, who know how to memorize.
We got plenty of
No,
robots.
because there's a huge difference. It's the Bloom's taxonomy of learning, where memorization's at the bottom, and being able to synthesize and create something in the aggregate is
Facts are
up
easy.
there.
Facts are the easy part.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to take a little break. We're going to come back with more. Lisa Schmeiser is here from IT Pro Today. It's so great to have you. She is an editor.
Yes.
Here. Jason Heiner. I can guess where you work, Jason. It looks like you work at CNET. CNET. Twit. CNET. Twit. I got to compete.
I got to say that his logo is slightly classier, but
his looks a lot better. It really. Anybody who is just casually tuning in might think this is a CNET podcast.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I don't mind at all. It just makes me want that. It's his laptop cover for those of you listening at home. Jason is the editor-in-chief of Tech Republic, which is a CBS interactive publication, along as is CNET. Right. You don't actually work at CNET, do you?
That's right. Well, so these are all of our tech brands that I have on here. So I've got CNET, and then I've also got Tech Republic,
Jason,
ZDNet, and then
can I have a word with you?
.com.
That CNET's awfully big. I can't even read the rest.
That is a whole, that covers the whole, that's the skin, and then the others are
you
logos.
Added stickers.
Yeah. It's the big one, obviously, right? We have 4 tech brands. CNET is the granddaddy. It's of them all. It's the oldest. It's also the one that's focused on the consumer, so it has the largest audience.
I was the fourth employee of CNET. Did you know that?
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember.
Oh, you know.
I
wrote
wrote
my biography.
Into your biography, exactly.
Actually, let's also give a plug for that fine book.
Thank you.
Where the geeks are.
Follow the geeks.
Although Where the Geeks Are would be a great movie. Follow the Geeks.
That's right.
I am chapter 10. 9?
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9.
Yes.
And it's actually a great book, a biography, the story of many, many wonderful geeks. It's available on Amazon, and you can go to Follow the Geeks.
Audible.
Yeah, Jason reads it.
As a matter of fact, the sample chapter is the beginning of the chapter on you, Leo.
You might even hear about CNET. Thank you for being here, Jason and Lisa, and of course, Ian Thompson. Always a pleasure. Congratulations on England's stunning victory.
I was absolutely gobsmacked, and I have to say there were very few sober people in England on Saturday. I mean, I'm still kicking myself because it was at 7 because of the Bay Area time differences.
It's very early,
7 a.m.
Yeah,
and I was like, can I really be asked to drag myself down to the pub at 7 a.m. to watch the game? and I lay in bed, and I've regretted it ever since because it was.
You didn't go see it? Oh, you didn't see it at the pub, which was
No, I didn't see it at the pub. I followed it on Twitter because I had to be up early for the Grand Prix this
great
morning.
game.
So
Great game.
it was.
And the good news is Swedish people are depressed anyway. So
the Swedes, I thought they were going to beat us like redheaded stepchildren. I mean, they've been playing very well throughout the game, and it was quite a shocker that we beat them 2-0. But when that second goal went in, it was just. I almost heard the screams from London.
it's funny. Americans couldn't care less about soccer except once every 4 years.
Yeah.
We follow the Portland Thorns in my house, mister.
The Portland Thorns.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
There's the problem right there.
It's Rose City.
Oh, it's the Rose City, and
Because
they're the
Portland
Thorns.
is the Rose City, and the MLS soccer team are the Portland Timbers
I follow.
because, of course, the rich
Yeah.
tradition of the Pacific Northwest of deforesting it.
I'm a fan of the
And,
Dung Beetles. I
And
think they're
the
a
women's
great
soccer team is the Portland Thorns.
Actually, why
and
isn't
they're
there a Dung
magnificent.
Beetles? They're really good with their feet. They work with balls all the time. There really should be a soccer team called
Can
the
you
Dung
imagine
Beetles.
like the mascot unicorn? Oh my gosh, you'd have somebody in a giant foam dung beetle costume.
Oh,
I'm telling you. I'm going to start the Petaluma Dung Beetles.
There you
Oh,
go.
absolutely. There you go.
Petaluma Dung Beetles. Hey, I'm just glad that Croatia beat Russia because if Britain was playing Russia in the semi-finals, they'd have to watch what they were eating and drinking so carefully.
No kidding. No
Half the
kidding.
team would be out with radiation poisoning. It wouldn't give them superpowers.
Well,
it would
I
just
hear
kill them.
Putin says it's not over yet.
Yeah.
So watch with interest. And, of course, with the register.co.uk, where he's chief of snark.
Actually, there's a strong
That's a growth
competition
industry.
for that title.
Actually, I almost said, Ian Thompson, he is with Die Techie Scum, because that's what your laptop says.
Oh, well, I've picked up a lot of... it also says hacker inside. and I
There's a
wouldn't count
tux
myself
on
as-
there, and I see a Twit logo. as well.
There's a Twit logo. There's also Enigma, Make Root Great Again, James Webb Space Telescope, and Sparky the Penguin, and B-Sides and Androids. So,
I like
and
it.
a DEF CON sticker or 3.
I like it. Our show today brought to you by Ring. There's a company that's, it's so funny. Jamie Siminoff, who created Ring, got to have a little victory tour because he went on, I want to call it Shark Week, Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Shark Week's something
pitched-
else, yeah.
Pitched an early product of his, not
Every
quite
week
the
like
Ring
it's Shark
video
Tank.
doorbell, but something similar. And the Sharks said, you got no chance, no hope in the world. Subsequently, he sold his company for the biggest turnaround any company's ever had that appeared, whether they got invested in or not, on Shark Tank, $1 billion to Amazon. So James...
Him, and he's like, no, that's not enough.
Oh, he didn't offer him enough.
and,
okay.
and so he's like, I can do better on that by doing
He
it by
was right.
myself. And he was, right.
And as you know,
That's
you go on
impressive.
Shark Tank, they take a huge chunk of your business.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Good
Exactly.
decision on Jamie's part. He created the Ring video doorbell, which I use and love, and I've had it on my door for a couple of years. This was an easy replacement for our old ding donger. Worked, in fact, because we had a wired doorbell, just exactly the same way. Well, with a little difference. Somebody comes up, pushes the button, chime rings in my house, but I also see a high-def video of them. I can talk to them. They can talk to me. It is the greatest. Also has a motion sensor, so they don't even have to ring the doorbell. If they just come up onto my porch, I know they're there, and I've got video to show. Ring has now a neighborhood feature where you can share, if you wish, with other Ring doorbell owners in your neighborhood, to kind of a neighborhood watch, a digital neighborhood watch. It really works. They tried it in a Southern California town. They cut crime by almost 50%. And that's the point. No, as soon as people see that Ring doorbell, they go, I am going to somebody else's house. Ring has, of course, expanded their line. We now have the Ring floodlight cam. This is actually a really, I put these around the house too. These are LED. You've seen floodlights, motion-activated floodlights around the house. That's very common. These are better because they're brighter. They are LED. You never have to replace the bulb. And they have the Ring camera attached, high-def video of what's going on, plus, of course, the same speaker and microphone setup, so you could say, hey, what are you doing there? There's even a 110 decibel alarm that you can trigger if it's not enough to just say, hey, what are you doing there? Sometimes raccoons. Just to give you an idea, this is from the Ring Twitter feed. These guys had been robbed twice. Here's a guy who just came and took look at this. He just took the weed whacker. So wait a minute, I got to play this again. This is hysterical. The guy just walks up. Hey, I like that weed whacker. I think I'll just take that.
Put that down, sir. I see you.
Whoops. He turns around and puts it down. Yeah, I guess no weed whacker for you today. Oh, she's sounding the alarm, too. Oh, better close that back door and run. Dude, I got your license plate on video. Yeah. I love the Ring Twitter feed, twitter.com/Ring. And I love the Ring floodlight cam, the Ring doorbell. They now have home security systems, too. Ring.com/Twit. You can choose from one of 3 Ring of Security kits. You get the Ring video doorbell and your choice of either 1, 2, or 3 floodlight cams. Connect your doorbell with your favorite smart locks and hubs for added convenience, monitoring, and security. And you can get up to $150 off as well. Ring.com/Twit. Stop crime before it happens. Help make your neighborhood safer, too, with Ring. Save up to $150 on a Ring of Security kit when you go to ring.com/Twit. Put that down, sir. I see you.
It is cool, though. We cover smart cities a lot, and cities are really working hard, struggling a little bit, trying to figure out, right, how to become forward-facing in security. Because like anything, like a big IT project, by the time they plan it, decide what to do, it's 2 years, right? And whatever they plan to do is almost completely obsolete. But a lot of them have bought in, communities are buying into these sort of these Ring
small scale, personal scale,
right? And Ring has made this thing where with neighborhoods where it'll attach cams together, and if something happens, then it can
we've got complete video
up, right? You've got complete video because if you have enough of these in a neighborhood, then all of a sudden, you can, it's essentially the same thing.
We've
London,
just had the same thing in the UK. There was a terrible child killing last week, and the police were just like, check your video doorbells, check your dash cams, send us the footage if you can, please.
Yeah.
And they managed to catch the person within about 6 to 8 hours.
Really?
And I think it's better. Maybe I'm wrong. We talked earlier about how there's cameras everywhere in London. But I think it's better to have a decentralized system where I'm monitoring my property, you're monitoring your property, instead of the government monitoring all of us.
I think David Brin wrote about that for Wired back in the 90s. And he was and at the time, I remember there being a huge backlash against the idea because how dare you be monitored? But the argument was, well, if everybody, if the idea was if surveillance is the de facto standard and like you said, it's decentralized, then
then there's no big brother collecting it all.
But dealing with HOAs in this country, I would hate to have the thought of an HOA having control over the internet neighborhood network.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ring.com/Twit. Thank you for your support, Ring. And Jamie, good work. He was right to turn down the sharks.
Speaking of turning down large amounts of cash, you heard about Matt Blaze this week.
No, who's Matt Blaze and what did he turn down?
Matt Blaze, famous security researcher, he's been hanging on to the crypto.com domain since 1993 as part of a personal crusade to actually remind people that crypto doesn't mean crypto means cryptography, not everything else. And he finally sold this week to a cryptocurrency firm. He's not saying how much for, but I think it was just like, what the hell? It's time to get the retirement fund sorted out. But
so in fact, he sold out his dream because cryptocurrency is not.
I know, but honestly, Matt Blaze has done more for computer security than almost anyone else on the planet. And I kind of don't begrudge him, but when it comes to selling out, it's like, remember the sex.com guy? He registered
He held
sex.
that thing forever.
Well,
did he make any money?
It got stolen from him, and at the point where the court got it back, it was making something like $2 million a month in advertising.
Wow!
One of our reporters wrote a story about it, wrote a novel about it, which is about to be filmed. But the whole sex.com saga was just because back then all this fraudster had to do was write to the registrar and say, this was given to me, it's been sold to me, please transfer it to me. Faxed it across to them, and they did it without question. A simpler time.
Well, and we thought at the time, I remember very well, that these generic names, these generic.coms would be the most valuable properties, and they turned out not to be.
I had a coworker at Wired who went through he wrote an automatic registry bot.
Oh, dear.
And a dictionary program and went through.
Registered every word.
No.
He registered a couple hundred domains and then would just sell them off anytime he wanted to take a vacation. Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
And anytime he wanted a vacation, he would just sell a domain or two when he wanted a down payment on a house. There was one time where he sold a domain to the lip balm company, Soft Lips, and they actually paid him in lip balm instead of money.
He registered softlips.com?
I believe so. Or
I think you
or
could
it
have
was
made more money.
or it was a domain that they wanted, where it was like
right.
soft-lipped adjacent.
Well, there's a famous story in the UK of
it was just the brute
British
force
lawyer.
automation.
Yeah, a British lawyer who registered 21stCenturyFox.com in 1999 or something on the principle this was going to be my retirement fund. And I don't think it quite worked out for him, but you've got to admire that kind of forward thinking.
Yeah.
And so many of these domains were wide open until 94, 95, 96.
Yeah. Well, this is what amazed me about Twitter for a while, was when Twitter first started up, you'd have all these people who would tweet as Disney characters or comic book characters. Well, I always wondered why Disney, for example, didn't lock it down and go scouting for the names of their characters and lock down those accounts. These are your intellectual property, and they're in the hands of who knows who, doing all sorts of stuff.
Well, there's a huge story about that this week in the New York Times talking about the new domain squatting, Instagram squatting. Let me see if I can find it. I think the number was the top 10 Instagram stars have more than 1,000 phony accounts, parroting them, claiming to be them. And it's become a big issue. I'm glad I'm not one of the top 10 Instagram stars.
Well, I mean, I find a lot of these parody accounts are in fact more entertaining than the actual
I don't
ones.
think they're all parodies. I think mostly they're trying to impersonate.
Yeah. No, one of my favorite parody Twitter, I guess it's a parody Twitter account, it's J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh, no.
Where he tweets basically in all caps and every third for and Miss Pratt features prominently. But I used to follow that one just because it was delightful.
Is that a person I should know who that is?
He
J.
is
Jonah
Spider-Man's
Jameson?
assigning editor. He's Peter Parker's assigning editor at the Daily Bugle.
Okay.
Yeah, my sarcastic rover is mine. It's the sarcastic curiosity rover.
Yeah.
Swift on security is my favorite.
Oh,
yes. One where it's like Taylor Swift as a security expert.
Yeah.
That's
So obviously you guys...
I know who the founder of that was, and we have to keep
You
quiet
do know
about
who
it.
it is?
Yeah. But
For example,
you can never actually say who. And now it's done by multiple people, but the
is it?
The original guy that did it is just... Yeah, I mean, that's a work of genius.
So this is the Times article came out this Sunday. Their analysis of the 9,000 top Instagram accounts are impersonating a mere 10 people. So they use as an example Kip Moore, who's a country music singer, songwriter, very famous. 28 accounts impersonating him on Facebook, at least 61 on Instagram. Here's the thing. Many of the accounts send messages to fans asking for love, promising love, asking for money, promising money, asking for love. And people fall for this.
Yeah.
Last year in Australia, a 42-year-old man was charged with 900 sex offenses for impersonating Justin Bieber on Facebook just to solicit nude photos from minors. And of course, it worked, of course. Last year, Oprah Winfrey posted a video saying somebody out there is trying to scam you using my name and avatar on social media asking for money. First of all, what kind of idiot do you have to be to believe
that Oprah's short?
That Oprah's asking you for money and then giving it to her. Hi, this is Oprah. I'm a little short right now. Could you give me $1,000?
I'm down to my last billion. It's just not good.
You can't hit up Dr. Oz. Is he not taking your calls
Dr.
anymore?
Oz is not taking the calls. New York Times commissioned an analysis to tally the number of impersonators for the 10 most followed people on Instagram: Beyonce, Taylor Swift. The analysis conducted by Social Imposter. This is a business. They protect celebrity names online, found nearly 9,000 accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pretending to be those 10 people. Neymar is number one, the Brazilian soccer star.
Okay.
1,676 impersonators. Wow. Selena Gomez, number two. Beyonce, 714. Miss Taylor Swift, 233. She had the least among the group. You know why?
Yeah.
She's got an active, real persona on Twitter, right? She's
She's
she'll
actually pull in fans, sort of super
people
fans
know
on
that,
Twitter,
right?
Yeah, and pull them in and give them pre-screenings of the next album or something like that.
Yeah.
She has used social media in a very intelligent way.
very sharp. Yeah. I think she's tiring of it now, though. I think she's retiring. She's got enough money.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you if you were Taylor Swift? No?
I mean,
she's on a concert tour, right?
This is actually something. So this is an interesting thing that I'll tease it because that Dan Patterson and I are working on. Dan and Patterson also regular.
Love Dan.
You're going on tour, aren't you?
But social media fatigue, right? If you look at a lot of the people who've been on social media for a decade now, right? Yeah.
I'm the poster boy for social media.
Exactly, all of us. You get to a point where it gets to be more of a burden than a joy. And so you look at a lot of those folks, they're now sort of either limiting their activity or focusing on, maybe they'll work on one platform and show up, sporadically on others.
Yeah.
And so whereas you look at the sort of mass of people that joined social media and a lot of the people that are active on it now, and that drove a lot of what happened in the 2016 election, for example, on social media. It was really 2012, 2013 when they sort of got into social media. That's when it went mass media.
Yeah.
Facebook, Twitter, others, when it went to the masses. And so they're at the sort of 5-year kind of peak, right? So what's going to happen when they get to the sort of 10-year and social media, mark, and social media becomes more of a burden? That's one of the things that that Dan and I are going to explore a little bit, is this idea of, what does that mean for public dialogue, for a lot of things?
I think it's nothing but good. I mean, honestly,
right?
Do you really think there's some benefit to being active in social media?
I think it's introduced me to some interesting. One of the things I like about
there's no good that comes of social media.
No. I mean,
just stop it.
There are a lot of. I mean, okay. I'm limited in social media. I don't have an Instagram account. I just stick to Facebook and Twitter because I can't be to cover that.
Instagram's
the many
to me the
platforms
most
that are out
benign
there.
because it's just nice pictures.
But it's just nice pictures, and I don't take that many pictures.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I first got onto Twitter, I was kind of disappointed because you were expecting, okay, you've got 140 characters. It'll be full of elegantly crafted haiku.
That's
which will,
BS.
But,
Oh,
yeah,
my
it's just
sweet
like,
summer
look at this
outrage,
link.
upset, insult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an engine for this stuff. And
Well,
frankly,
do you guys
my
have
advice
rules or general guidelines? For example, what I've noticed is I generally go off Twitter at 5 o'clock on Friday, and I don't go back on until about noon on Monday.
If you have to make that rule, you have a problem.
Well, it's not a rule. I just noticed it was a thing I was doing.
Get off Twitter.
Yeah,
this
you
is
see-
my new slogan.
here's
This is my
another
new
thing, is
just get off. Here's an example.
If I'm traveling, I'm never on social media, for example, because I would rather just.
And you're happier for
Oh
it.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I just got back from a week at Lassen Volcanic.
Do an
and it was just
experiment
But if I'm
this
watching
week.
a Grand
amazing.
Prix, I like
Like
chatting with
the-
people
the
on Twitter
clear-
about
See
it.
how you feel after you
Yeah.
get off Twitter from just for the next 5 or 6 days. Just do a little check-in after you get
No,
off
I'm
Twitter.
like wondering if maybe I should treat Twitter like I treat bill paying, where I'm like, okay, I schedule a time every month where I do it.
You should
and
treat it
maybe I
like you
should
treat heroin.
I think it's
What,
more
every day?
Facebook than
No.
Twitter for me. Facebook. I don't show up much, especially since about the 2016 election,
Yeah.
where now everything is like we got to sort you into buckets.
Yeah.
I've deactivated Facebook. I didn't delete it because every once in a while I can activate it, see what's
Okay.
going on, and deactivate it.
Okay.
But I deactivated Twitter. I have an account, but I think people get in trouble on Twitter. And I see nice, normal people get on Twitter and get on little bitchy Twitter fights that ends up hurting them. I've done it. I've seen a lot of people do it. Here's an example. This is 2 developers on Guild Wars, right?
Oh, that story, yeah.
But I think people are going to say, oh, poor Jessica and Peter. So Jessica Price is a narrative designer. She designs narratives for Guild Wars. On July 3rd, this is 4 days ago, she tweeted a 29-tweet thread talking about the challenges of writing players in an MMORPG. Some guy, some streamer, goes on Twitter. It says, really interesting thread to read. However, allow me to disagree slightly. And then tweets 3 tweets about how narrative design influences player expression, et cetera, et cetera. Price is insulted. She says, thanks for mansplaining. Yeah. He comes back and forth. This is...
So Twitter's a terrible place to have conversations.
So,
I think that's-
by the way, another guy who works with Jessica Price, Peter Freeze, weighs in. Yeah. They both get fired. Jessica's last tweet is, if Reddit wants you fired, they'll fire you because, of course, a Reddit storm occurred. Another place that really isn't
Well, just
worth
like you
Another
should
place
never
to
drink and
terrible.
drive, you should never tweet while emotional.
should never tweet,
Like you should,
period.
you should
Yeah.
never go on social media when you're not feeling 100%
Yeah.
calm and like centered.
And
because
before you hit
it's-
send,
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
2 minutes, go and have a cup of tea.
Allow me to
come back
disagree
and watch.
slightly.
I started a doc on that. All the tweets I never sent,
Yeah.
that I never posted, because like things that I wanted to tweet, and I went, no, thought better of
That's
it.
like the Willie Nelson
Basically,
song. to all the girls I love. To all the tweets I've
if
never
we do our
sent.
traditional Friday night, go out to the pub and get wankered thing, then the phone stays in the pocket. You know, it's
Any
Twitter.
tweet is drunk tweeting, whether you're sober or not.
Twitter's still great for
off the
news.
Twitter.
I'd use it as
Yeah.
a news feed. I love it
Yeah.
as a news feed. When people that do tweet storms almost always get either blocked or muted or unfollowed or muted. But I still find it the best place to go if something's happening and it's like, oh no, what's going on? First place I go.
have to
There
say-
are some
It's
people where I
Twitter.
will follow their Twitter threads because I know that they're thoughtful and careful and considerate.
Sure.
But when you have someone who starts with, okay, it's time for some game theory, mute, block, unfollow.
Yeah.
So I don't think Jessica Price did anything wrong.
Yeah.
Sure.
I feel bad for her. She should not have
she
been fired.
expressed an opinion.
Except Twitter and anything. This is inevitable.
But I don't
Stay
think you can
off
blame
Twitter.
The
So
I don't
this
think you can
is-
blame
so-
the platform for it. I think you can
I
blame our
agree.
employers for being so spineless as to
this
cave
is what I was
into
about to
this.
say, though, is here's one of the minefields that we ran into at a former employer of mine. I was on the social media task force, and they wanted to mandate that every writer in the organization get a social media feed and dedicate it solely to promoting the organization's work. And about half of the writers already had their own personal Twitter feeds. And the question I brought up was, so what do we do? Do we just start separate accounts for promoting our work? And they said, no, you've already got followers. So of course, we're just going to require you to start promoting your stories on your personal
They
feed.
can go stuff it so far.
Yeah, it's
Which is
Bad
pretty much what I
idea.
which is pretty much
Bad
what I
idea.
said was, why are you expecting someone else who's done all the work to build an audience? Why are you expecting that is suddenly your asset?
Yeah.
And I think part of the thing that we're still working out now in terms of social media as corporate asset is you cannot hire somebody who has their own independent following and expect that to become a corporate asset you can control.
Yeah.
And the companies who do that are hurting themselves more than they're hurting the people they fire, because they're going to get the reputation for being the ones that are stealing someone's work or
Yeah.
reputation and trying to pass it off as their own.
That's well said, because what you can expect, and when you hire somebody now, you are, and this goes in journalism a lot, and tech journalism especially. If you hire somebody and that already has a following, that already has a presence, you are, you have an understanding that you're hopefully getting some of their mojo. As part of your brand. And at the same time, if you have a big brand, you're giving some of the brand's mojo to them as part of it. But it's not, you can't think of it as an ownership relationship, right? Like it's a partnership relationship.
No, I'm sorry. An employer
yeah.
buys your skills for a certain set period of time a week for a set period of fun. They don't buy your reputation. They don't buy what you do outside of work. And it's the other thing that really worried me this week about this was, you heard about this pool past Pete guy, like another person who called cops on a black family in a swimming pool.
Someone for being black in public,
You see, we've now had 3 of these in the last 4 weeks, and sooner or later, Twitter's going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
And they're going to get the wrong person. They're going to get the wrong person fired and ruin their life. And I just think we need to step back a bit. And it's turning into a mob.
Yeah.
Turning into.
Well, okay, you've been at the rough
don't
end
ever
of
go.
it.
Yeah,
just
you-
like you
you-
don't get in a car after you've been drinking, you don't go on social media if you're feeling things.
Yeah.
Like feel your feelings.
So only
work
go
it
if you're a
out.
robot. Price writes the
Or
message.
before your coffee's kicked in and you're just kind of.
She's out of work.
Yeah.
She says the message is very clear, especially women at the company, Guild Wars. If Reddit wants you fired, we'll fire you. The quality of your work doesn't matter. Your personal space, your personal social media is not yours. You are on the clock 100% of the time. We own you. You're not allowed to be yourself. You're not allowed to get frustrated. And you're not allowed to have your own space to breathe. Get out there. Make sure the players have a good time. Make sure you smile while they hit you. I feel terrible for her. But I honestly think using Twitter is where, and
It was a blog post. It was an article.
It was
a
an article?
Medium. No, it should have been.
Should've been.
It should have been an article.
she might have
a
still
I
Medium.
think
gotten
the challenge,
fired.
Maybe.
I think
That's true.
I think people put stuff on Twitter because they kind of.
I think
they
you
want
put
the
more incendiary stuff on Twitter.
I think
If she
people
had
put
written a
those
blog
threads
post, it
on
might have been
Twitter
different.
because they want the dopamine hits of
Right.
people liking or retweeting or
Yeah.
reacting.
Right.
And since nobody
And
bothers with blog comments,
If she had
this is a way
ignored
for-
the
yeah.
response, by the way, one of the ways I make Twitter better is I don't look at replies, period.
Right.
At all. I look at, if you cultivate a good feed with good quality content, I use TweetDeck to eliminate retweets, which, by the way, eliminates a lot of the viral incendiary stuff. So I'm only reading original content from good people, and I don't look at anything that anybody says to me. It's okay. I also don't tweet, because there have been a couple of times I've tweeted and I've regretted it. It's been a mistake. And so I think it's a dangerous place. All right, let's stop and move on to something else.
Don't post on Twitter while emotional.
While
any
a
way.
human.
Yeah.
Don't post on Twitter while human. Only do it when you're a robot. By the way, if you
Can you imagine if Twitter just became nothing but bots tweeting and adding each other and picking fights?
if you look at my feed, it's just a bot. It's
Yeah.
just saying Leo's about to do a show. Leo's about to do a show. And if you live in Uganda, and I think this is appalling. I defend people's rights to use Twitter.
Yeah.
But the president of Uganda is charging people a tax if you want to use Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Google Hangouts, YouTube, Skype, Yahoo Messenger, any social media, a nickel a day, which sounds like not much, but it is in Uganda.
wages.
Freedom of the press belongs to them. What owns the press, I guess.
Yeah.
It's-
Although I'm curious to know how they're actually going to institute this, because the payment systems alone would be
It goes with your mobile bill. They charge it to your
of
mobile phone
course.
bill.
Yeah, I guess landlines are so rare that everyone's on mobile, and
It's also your bank typically, like you know,
Because
so,
there's a lot of smaller mobile-only banks there.
yeah.
yeah.
He says
again, also
social media, this is President Yoweri Museveni, social media is a luxury by those who are enjoying themselves or those who are malicious. All the moral reasons are in favor of that tax. I'm not disagreeing with the guy. He said Ugandan social media users are endlessly donating money to foreign telephone companies through chatting or even lying. The response, of course, from Kampala, a Kampala-based charity worker. The tax is an absolute insult to Ugandans. We already buy data, which the government taxes. Why should we again have to pay this money to the government to access these platforms? Amnesty International called on the Ugandan government to scrap the tax, which is, they call it an attempt to smother dissent disguised as a measure to raise revenue. I'm not sure which is more important, raising revenue.
This reminds me of the Chris Rock bit where he said, fine, make guns accessible, just charge a lot for bullets.
Make the bullets expensive.
And the punchline, of course, is somebody's looking over a bullet roller course. I'm like, they must have really hated this.
But yeah, I mean, Uganda's got some strange rules. Just look at their laws on homosexuality. But I mean,
Tanzania's licensing bloggers.
Really?
Yeah, you got to pay a lot of money to be a blogger.
Oh, good grief.
So I think that's an anti-free speech move, but maybe not.
Well,
Maybe it's
this is it. It's all about cutting down the amount of people on the platform, and
So
and
how
trying
long
to
until
limit it.
somebody starts trying to charge for Instagram, as in you can't Instagram our country unless because if you geotag, we'll find you and charge you money for exploiting our natural resources.
I'm sure there's lawyers who'll be happy to set up systems to do that.
I mean, there was that piece a couple of weeks ago about how hotels in the Maldives are getting very, very tired of influencers trying to scam them out of a free stay at a $12,000 a week resort.
Yeah.
Really? Because I wonder, that's all that's on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Is attractive young women in skimpy bikinis at a lovely luxury resort hotel. You think I'm following, but I follow travel blogs, and that's what I see a lot of. And Instagram makes it easy now because they can do a hashtag travel blogger or whatever, and you'll follow all of them. $900 a year to be a blogger in Tanzania.
So the minute I hear somebody who describe themselves as an influencer, it's just like, you're such a prat.
Have you ever heard somebody describe themselves as a thought leader in the wild?
Oh, no.
Because I've had that happen
Let's
to me. where
charge
someone's reminded me of
$10,000
that.
to be an influencer or a thought leader.
To
Let's
use
charge.
that.
Yeah.
I'm for that.
Yeah.
I'm for that.
Hey, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, more news. I'm going to get to some good news. I swear to God. But first, let's talk a little bit about our sponsor, Uber. You can read about all the ways Uber's moving forward by going to uber.com/moving forward, a new site. But I have to say, I feel like, first of all, I use Uber. And I happily use Uber. My kids use Uber. Uber is an empowering technology for my mom. I set up an Uber account for her because she's 86, doesn't drive. My sister can't always get her to the doctor, go to the grocery store. So it's great because I put it on my charge card, so I see the $8 Uber charge. And I know Mom's getting out, which is great.
Also, I guess you know where your kids are as well.
And I know where my kids are. Uber is working really hard to move forward. In fact, they've got a site, uber.com/moving forward. They want to re-earn your trust. They're determined to improve the ride-sharing experience, both for drivers and for riders. And a lot of this goes to Dara Khosrowshahi. Dara is an amazing new CEO, and he really is, I think, committed to making Uber everything Uber was supposed to be in the first place. A great place to get a great ride, a great job for people who want to work in the gig economy. They're putting new features in their app to take the stress out of your pickup. For instance, when you get an Uber ride now. You can verify the details of your ride, see your driver's name, its car, its license. Make sure you get in the right car every time. They want you to have a better trip. They're continuously working on ways to keep you better protected and connected throughout your ride. Uber's putting people first by changing the company from within, with new executive leadership and new company norms. And I want to give these guys a second chance because I really appreciate Uber, and I use Uber all the time. Whenever I'm in a town I don't know, having that Uber app and the ability to get a ride is huge for me. Don't just take my word for it. You can see the improvements. Just install the Uber app if you haven't already and check it out. And I always tip. And I love it. They put the tip in. I always tip. I told my daughter that. She said, do I have to tip? I said, Abby, always tip. Give them some cash or press that button that gives them a tip. You can read about all the ways Uber's moving forward by going to uber.com/moving forward. Uber.com/moving forward.
Uber Eats, I've tried lately and I've been pretty impressed with it. In fact, I was in Madrid and it was there. I used Uber in Madrid because it's the only, the only one there of the U.S. Ones. And then I was sick for a couple of days while I was there, which is the worst when you're sick when you're traveling.
Yes.
And I was like, and then I got in my Uber. I just gotten a ride back to the hotel with Uber, and then it popped up this little thing and said like, "Do you want to try Uber Eats?" And I was like, "Yes, please,
feed me.
Send me food."
Feed me.
And they had it there in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I was like, it was unbelievable, and it was actually pretty reasonable. There wasn't a huge fee, so
Although I have to
was
say,
impressed.
eating takeout food in Spain is the equivalent to just like, what on earth are you
If you're
thinking?
sick, what
if
are you
you're
going to
sick,
do?
though, yeah,
Yeah.
true.
But
I
it
can
was
see
just
why-
a stack of 20 tiny plates.
We travel a lot, though, and I have to say, almost anywhere you go, you can take an Uber, except London. You can take, right? London?
Yeah,
Dave,
Uber's license was temporarily withdrawn, but I think they're now
Is it
back.
back?
They're street legal again.
I first used Uber when they launched in Paris. This was at Le Web about 5, 6, maybe 8 years ago. That was my first experience. It was a great experience. And I, as a traveler, knowing what you're going to get is a huge thing.
I can understand why they broke big in San Francisco initially, because San Francisco's taxi service
Oh, it's terrible.
Oh, it's awful.
absolutely awful, and particularly if you've got a foreign accent.
It's also
I was-
terrible to be a driver in San Francisco too. So you know, and Muni is just a dreadful public transit system as well. So if you can
By
outsource,
comparison to the rest of the US, though, the Bay
it has
Area
a
is
public
good.
transit system which is leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of other U.S. cities. But it's tremendously. I can see the appeal of a rideshare service because it's really frustrating to move around.
To go from San Francisco to
Yeah.
the East Bay, there is one bus an hour after 12:30, and that's the only way apart from private drives. So.
In
I take a boat.
In Louisville, the taxis were they've been so bad for so long, and Uber and Lyft came in, and it's made just a huge difference. And it's
Competition's
huge.
not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think the taxi commissions and the medallions and the taxi industries had a free ride, so to
they
speak,
got
for a
complacent,
long time.
Yeah.
Like in a lot of areas.
That said, this entire discussion, I just spent a week up in Shasta County, California, which is where Lassen Volcanic National Park is.
Cool.
And
Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that
it is
gorgeous?
It is stunning. It's one of my favorite national parks, but I had almost no cell phone service the whole time I was there. And the broadband in the neighborhood went out when people next door moved. We had a group of 20-somethings at the cabin next door, and they literally sucked all the broadband for
They're
like
all
3 days.
Snapchatting all the time.
They were
Wow.
like because they had they figured out a way to get they gave the deer that were roaming around potato chips and Snapchatted the whole experience.
goodness.
I know, but what I was thinking while I was there, and in between
Logan, don't ever be a millennial, okay?
and in between going on hikes and swimming in pristine alpine lakes and so on and so forth, what I was thinking was, we talk a lot about technology in terms of like Uber Eats and Uber and rideshare services and e-commerce, and there are whole swaths of the U.S. or the world where the technology challenges are going to be much different because the conditions are much different.
We always forget, those of us in the internet saturated areas, what it's like to live in a rural area and have very little, if any, internet.
And I would love to
while
see
that's
more
nice, if you're
people-
walking around in a meadow in the Lassen National Park, it's not a good way to get a job. It's not a good way to...
Well, because this is the thing,
participate
is
in
I
the
was
economy.
thinking we have an economy that's increasingly networked and increasingly global.
Yeah.
And the question is how do you build out an infrastructure to serve people without altering the character? Or more importantly, how do you build out an infrastructure that solves region-specific problems? I was talking to one of the guys I was talking to up there. he mentioned that in order for senior citizens to get medical care in dire emergencies, they often have to pay for a helicopter to medevac them out and down to a hospital. And I was thinking, well, is there anybody who's going to work on telemedicine in a way that's real and meaningful for this population? Because you do have a lot of people who plan to retire to the mountains, and it works fine until your health goes.
You can kind of blame them for...
Yeah. Well, but the thing is...
I mean, I'm thinking about retiring at some point, and absolutely not going to retire somewhere where there's no...
If you have
medical care.
But if you have a really small retirement fund,
you don't have a choice.
Because you get priced out of more expensive places with more robust infrastructure. So
okay, all right.
When we're talking about tech, there's one thing to talk about consumer-facing tech that thrives in really heavily populated areas, but this most recent trip to Alaska, and I started thinking, what kind of tech challenges or infrastructure are we not anticipating for populations that are getting pushed out of these areas, either by choice or not?
It's spreading a lot faster than we think. Yeah. I did a story earlier this week about a stork that got mugged for its SIM card. This was
a stork?
Yeah.
Like a flying bird that delivers babies?
Exactly, yeah.
That had a SIM card and it got mugged.
We see researchers are now tracking migration patterns of storks. And because the mobile network
they're giving them cell phones.
Well, basically, they're strapping a little transponder onto the bird's back with a GPS transmitter and a SIM card in it. Yeah. And the mobile network is so broad, because these things migrate from Poland down to Southern Africa, that every time they pass within range of a mobile network, the SIM card could immediately burst out its GPS data.
Wow. Yeah.
And the bird was migrating back up to Poland, was carrying on, got to the Great Nile Valley. Yeah. Stopped dead presumes dead for 15 days, and then took a circuitous 26-mile route to the nearest town.
It ended up at a pub, which is not really where you expect to see a store.
And the charity then got a $2,500 bill where someone had taken the SIM card out and used it to phone around the world.
I mean, the stork has better connectivity than 33% of the U.S., so you can't blame it,
Yeah.
But it is remarkable how much of the U.S. is not covered. I mean, I remember driving through Death Valley and not getting signal and thinking, if there's anywhere you want to...
This is why I keep a paper atlas in my car, is because I do I do a lot of camping and hiking, especially in Northern California, and coverage is thin. And the last thing you want is to be stuck without a map or GPS. And
Dead Tree never runs out of batteries and will always...
Exactly, yeah.
There's a big story on this this just yesterday, actually, in Think Progress, which is a left-leaning publication, but does some interesting stuff. That this one was called "In Rural Kentucky, a Battle to Provide Reliable Internet." A story that I found on Twitter, by the way. But it was, the idea was there are people in parts of rural Kentucky, which is a very coal-centric country, part of the country, and they have people that were retraining. And one of the things that they're retraining is there are these companies now that will let you do customer service work, but you have to, you do it from home, and you sort of have but you have to have at least 10 megabits down, which sounds like nothing, right? It sounds like most of us would be dying if we had 10 megabits.
But in some parts of the country,
there are lots of parts.
You're showing your internet privilege.
Totally.
There's plenty of people on DSL. There's 6, 5, 4.
Right. Exactly. That's my point. Is that if you're in a major metropolitan area, which 50% of the U.S. is, but if you're in the other 50%, a lot of times you're struggling for what we would have thought of as a decent connection 5-10 years ago. And in this case, it to your point, Leo, earlier, it matters for economic activity, for economic viability, and for being able to get a job. Because this is a person that's essentially trained in this job, wants to do the job, and he's talking about sometimes he basically has to go to McDonald's to get Wi-Fi, and
or sit in gas stations to check his email.
So this also creates huge educational gaps too.
Yes.
This is why we put Starbucks on every corner.
I did a story about 10 years ago where I was asked, where the question I wanted to answer was, we used the TVA and got all of America electricity and indoor plumbing.
You just love the Depression.
Hey, got stuff
Well,
done.
it was a transformative event
It
for our
was.
country. So
And we decided at that time, I actually bring this up all the time in terms of rural electrification. We decided that the rural areas in this country had to have electricity.
they had to be they had to have the same level playing field and so the question I was posing to different think tanks and people who study this stuff is, why don't we do that with broadband?
Yeah.
Why don't we ensure internet access the same way why don't we treat it like utility, the same way we do telephone
and instead,
access?
you have
The answer
companies like Verizon and Comcast lobbying against
Well, the answer I got from
government internet.
The answer I got from a right-wing think tank, and also the FCC just struck down. Actually,
the municipal,
pulling funding for municipal internet for American Indian reservations. So, But the answer I got from a right-wing think tank was, well, internet speeds keep accelerating. Why should we bother investing in any internet infrastructure whatsoever when it's just going to be obsolete in a few years anyway?
So I'll play devil's advocate with them for a minute, because knowing some of the people that are working on municipal and are like ready to invest and all of that, and they're like, then they look at what's happening in 5G, which is moving a lot faster than we expected, and it's kind of like, by the time we build this thing out, we're going to get leapfrogged so quickly that it's a tough argument to make to invest there. So I understand it from that perspective, but it's one of those things that we have to figure out a way. I think
good news, because in 20 states municipal internet is outlawed.
Yeah.
Thanks to lobbying efforts by the big internet service providers,
which is anti-competitive, right?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Which is
the other thing I find really
it
interesting
started in the
is that
Keystone State
in a lot of
because
these
that's where
states
Comcast is.
And what's interesting is in the states where a lot of this is outlawed, those are heavy ag states, and agriculture is depending increasingly on big data, especially for weather, especially for planting, especially for when to allocate water resources. There are tractors that have this stuff built in now.
Oh yeah, most of them do.
And
in your native state, Tennessee, Chattanooga, very famously had a public public internet's infrastructure. Yeah. And as a result, you have the worst laws of all.
That's not. I'm in Kentucky, not
Kentucky.
Tennessee,
All right,
but that's
Tennessee,
okay.
Kentucky.
Oh my God,
sorry,
that's like fighting words.
But I mean, I'm not from Kentucky, but I live in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a great place.
I keep thinking you're from.
That's
is.
okay.
I was there
From
for the
day
first
one,
time
I
for
keep
DerbyCon last year, and it's a fantastic place to live.
Yeah. DerbyCon, very big there. And
Shocking
it's
to me that Virginia's on the list.
Yeah.
But it is to the point Ian and I were just saying, like, it's anti-competitive. If you want competition, and if a metro area like Chattanooga wants to build its own internet because a bunch of fiber has been laid there's a bunch of dark fiber sitting around, then by all means they should be able to do it. I think that the argument is that, well, if they do it, then they can give themselves breaks and they can, cut the price, and then
because the major telcos receive no subsidies whatsoever.
Right. And so it's different kinds of anti-competitive, right? Is what we're kind of arguing.
I'm also slightly worried about the 5G spreading faster argument, because I've seen this with 4G when you remember when the 4G standards came up, it was going to be, it's LTE, but it's also WiMAX, and it's also enhanced 3G. And with the first round of 5G things we're coming look at, it's not true 5G. It's basically just slightly enhanced 4G, and the telcos are using this as an example. Well, you can get wireless, so why do we need to put lines in? At the end of the day, it comes down to the National Highways Project or something like that. When you look at countries like Korea and Finland and other countries around the world, which basically the government said, look, this is coming. We'll pay to put some fiber in there, and you can have open competition over that. And this is what Google Fiber was originally about. And it's just being slowly and remorselessly shut down by the big players because they don't want competition.
It's with the US being so big, though, it's tough to and so spread out, and less dense. It does create, that's a big part of a problem. I think in 100 years from now, it's going to be academic, but it is tough because it's so unprofitable to lay that fiber. It's more profitable, though, to run fiber, a bunch of fiber lines to cell towers, obviously, than it is.
But the thing you have to remember,
homes.
and I was schooled in this by Stacey Higginbotham, is that 5G, at least the 5G technologies we're talking about right now, require lots more sites and lots more backhaul.
Yeah.
So in fact,
they don't go as far.
So there is in fact a much bigger demand for land, fiber in the ground.
So so this is interesting. I've had a interesting conversation with some wireless engineers about this, because I think that they've designed it. This is only a theory. I think they've designed it in one sense that it's not just physics involved, but they've also designed it in one sense to have more
meshy,
more sites for backup. Also, two, because you're going to have so many more devices on those towers, right? You're just not going to be able to put.
But that's
the number.
That's exactly the problem, which is the telcos design for dense urban areas. They don't design for rural areas. So that means, of course, San Francisco's going to get 5G, but Lassen National Park is not going to ever get 5G. So that really is the argument that you got to allow municipalities, underserved municipalities, to do their own.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I wasn't here
Can't wait
then,
for
but
5G. It's not coming to
in the
rural
mid
areas.
'90s. Didn't the major telcos get a massive government tax write-off?
Sure.
1986
to fiber up the country, and I think we're still waiting on that one.
Well, there's a lot of that fiber that got laid and is still not been used. There's a lot of dark fiber. So that could work in our favor for 5G, right? Because a lot of that 5G or a lot of that fiber was put in the ground.
Serving densely populous areas, though, for the most part, right?
Right. And so
But we built the Trans-Pacific Railroad. Surely we can get the Trans-Pacific, fiber
Actually, I believe it was
running.
immigrants that built the Trans-Pacific Railroad, so
Yeah,
we're
true.
out of luck.
Sorry.
Well, these days,
I promised you good news, and I will have it when we come back. But first, a word from Slack. Slack! I love Slack. Who doesn't love Slack? It's funny because Stuart Butterfield, who created Flickr, remember, it was originally going to be a massively online game. They pivoted to Flickr, created Flickr, sold it to Yahoo. Stuart realized quickly Yahoo was not going to be a good home, went off, created Slack, created something that is completely viral in business. Once a business started using Slack, everybody wants to use it. It's because it keeps the right people in your team in the loop. The information you need is always at your fingertips. It's fun to use. It really fosters teamwork. And the channels let you organize conversations and information around projects, around offices, around teams. Everything you need to work on is in one place. It's faster and easier to get things done. It integrates with every possible technology that you're using in your company, whether it's Salesforce or Zendesk or Jira or Google Drive. Drag and drop files right into Slack. Slack will work with more than 1,000 apps, and that number goes up all the time because guess what? Slack's got a great API. Developers love Slack. They make sure it works. I mean, I remember our Jeopardy, Alex Trebek Slack bot. He was great fun. You could always ask him and he'd give you a question. Slack's fun as well as productive. Reduce emails, get rid of emails, streamline your team's communication with Slack. It connects the tools and services you need into one place. Organize your team with real-time messaging, video, or voice calls. Yeah, they got voice calls too now. Group file sharing, searchable archives. That's one other thing is your corporate history is never lost. It's all in there. With Slack, your team is better connected. And, of course, with mobile apps on iOS and Android, desktop apps too, everything syncs seamlessly. You pick up where you left off no matter where you are. Slack is 100% secure, so privacy guaranteed. S-L-A-C-K. You know. Get it. Slack.com. Look at all the companies that work with Slack, that use Slack. Everybody uses Slack.
Certainly, it's.
Oh, we do. Yeah.
Do you use Slack?
Yes.
Yes.
Love it.
Slack.com. Love the Slack.
It's astonishing quite how late it took some company. I worked at my previous employer. They were still using Yahoo Messenger. And it's
good Lord.
Wow, it's like the 1990s again. You know?
Somebody has
All
built
of the promise of tech, none of the disappointments.
Oh, I know. It was such a simpler time. You read the Hacker Manifesto now, and it just looks like so hopelessly optimistic in some areas.
Have you ever revisited Neil Stephenson's "In the Future was the in the beginning was the command line"?
Oh, yes. Yeah, what a classic. Somebody has created a AIM server. You have to download the old AOL Instant Messenger client. You can log onto the server. It's got the old interface. It doesn't preserve your account, but you can log into it, create an instant. I think it's not Slack.
No.
But if you have some nostalgia for keywords.
Oh, there's my favorite nostalgia. I'm trying to find it now. Yeah, here we are. This is a guy who's running FileMaker Pro Server version 3, running on macOS 9.0.4,
Nice.
which is running on a Power Mac emulator, which is running on a CentOS 4.5, which is running on a VMware virtual machine. It's like the ultimate Russian doll of software.
And
I
you know
love
what's
it to
hysterical?
bits.
It's probably faster than FileMaker was needed. I know. Amazon Prime Day. Here's the good news. It's coming July 16th. Are you excited?
Oh, yet another marketing. Oh, it's just.
It's interesting how.
With Black Friday and Amazon Prime, when did these days kick off in this
well,
country?
I've noticed something. Everybody's having sales in July now. I think we have a new sale period. It's July, right? 4th of July.
The National Retail Federation tracks sales trends. That's basically what they do, right?
Yep.
And back to school used to be this big spiky period towards the end of the. And what they found is actually thanks to Prime Day and all of the other retailers who are trying to draft on that energy, the back to school period has actually moved to the point where people are basically like their kids get out of school, they clean out the backpack, they start looking.
Start now.
And
Yeah.
one of the drivers of that is technology, because more and more children are being expected to have computers or tablets.
Yeah.
And when you go to college, you're usually expected to buy a machine. And so these sales in the middle of the summer are how a lot of budget-conscious parents manage to hit the school supply lists, buy the machines that their kids need, and stock up for the school year.
I'm always slightly suspicious about some of these things, because it does seem that some stores in particular will jack their prices up for a month and then dramatically cut them on the sale day.
Oh yeah, it's a tried and true American retail.
Well, the same thing happens in the UK, to be honest, but we just have fewer sales. We have the New Year's Day sales, and that's really it.
Boxing Day, do you still have sales?
It's shifted to Boxing Day. It used to be that people would queue up camp outside shops like Harrods for like 2 days before the New Year's Day sales came in.
Wow.
And, sit there in tents, and there'd be a very sort of British, we're getting through this, boiling tea on our thermos type thing. It was a tremendously sort of encouraging ritual. But now, the Black Tuesday seems to be moving over to the US. But it's just,
Black Tuesday.
What do you call it?
Black Tuesday.
So there's Black Friday, there's
Friday,
Cyber
that's
Monday,
it.
there's now Giving Tuesday.
Giving Tuesday.
There's
When's
Giving
that?
Tuesday.
Is that after Cyber Monday or?
Yes, and there's Cyber Monday, there's Giving Tuesday, there's a green shopping day now that
and don't forget
retailers have been-
Singles Day, the #1 shopping day of the year.
Yeah.
Thanks to China.
Yes, true.
It's been interesting because there's been a rise in events, like we just talked about with this, and then more and more brands are rolling things out too. For example, J. Crew called March 31st Stripes Day and aggressively promoted its striped stuff.
How much of this is
Wayfair has
desperation?
done Way Day.
Is it desperation or is it actually good marketing? And this is the.
I don't know.
Yeah, I went on a bit of a Twitter rant about this today because, obviously when you go into the Twitter front page, you see the trending articles of the thing. And it seems like every day is now a something day.
Oh yeah.
So
Why are you on Twitter? I've been telling you.
Well, no, so for example, July 6th was National Fried Chicken Day, but also International Kissing Day, to which I responded, they can kiss my...
I missed it. I missed it.
Ooh, delicious chicken skin.
What is it with fried chicken in this country? It's just...
It's the skin. The chicken itself, I could honestly care less about. But
I know, because you get this great skin, but it's over dry, chewy chicken that...
You have to brine the chicken first. You have to soak it in buttermilk for at least 24 hours, and that way. Yeah.
okay.
Not brining it, buttermilking
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Interesting. Never done that one.
Yeah, soak it in buttermilk for
Then
24
then
hours
you
first.
dredge it in flour, then you
And
dip
the
it in eggs,
spices,
and then
yeah.
you dredge it again. You double dredge. Are you a double dredger?
Yes, and don't forget the spices, too. You don't just do flour.
21 herbs and spices. Didn't you love that when the KFC Twitter feed was followed by exactly
They were following exactly
21
an herb.
people
That was
named
very
herbs?
In
clever.
social media
Spice, yeah.
marketing, that was really quite good.
So Netflix at its last shareholders event
Oh, this story's insane.
said we're going to spend $8 billion on new content.
Yeah.
And started, by the way, a bidding war. Apple said, no, we're going to spend $1 billion. And everybody's trying to buy stuff. Amazon bought Lord of the Rings for almost $1 billion. Just the rights.
Yeah.
Not even the cost of making. Netflix has now said their budget for 2018 is $13 billion.
That's
It's
a
working.
62% bloat over what they promised.
It's
Yeah.
well, do you think they're doing more stuff? Or you think it just cost more?
There's never been a better time to be a content producer
No kidding.
in
Yeah.
Hollywood. People that are writers there that used to just be dying to find anybody to do
Yeah.
their idea. They will literally say an idea to a producer, and they're like, "Oh, just
have
write
a
it
check.
down."
Let me get my checkbook.
Yeah,
I mean,
write it down in an
It's
email,
just
send
right.
it to me.
It's Caddyshack meets Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, and
It's like,
exactly. So they've got 3, 4, their next 3, 4, 5 ideas already sold before they've even written the scripts and everything.
So the
So
paragraph
Logan
in this
learned to be a script writer.
Well, it'll be gone by that
Yeah.
time.
The
you know?
paragraph
It'll be over. Then all
It'll
the
be
money's
over by
gone.
that time.
So the
BAI
paragraph
is
in this
doing
story
it.
I want to call out is they talk about Netflix is going to be releasing 82 films this year, compared to the 23 Warner Brothers is putting out and the 10 Disney films is putting out. What they don't say in here with this is that they're not making it with Warner Brothers or Disney style budgets. But there has been something that screenwriters have actually talked about in the Hollywood Reporter for the last few years about how the middle market of movies has been squeezed out thanks to the demand for blockbusters.
Right.
And what Netflix is doing is it's basically giving filmmakers a space to make those mid-market movies that we used to all see in the 80s and 90s that had been pushed out of the box office in recent years. Like, we were watching The Princess Bride this last week, and I was like,
classic.
but you look at that, it was a fairly low budget movie, and it would not be made by a major studio today because it just wouldn't. It's
I'm just
not tied
hoping
to-
this blockbuster
But
sort of
Netflix
trend
would
that we've
make it,
seen
yeah.
is actually on the way out. I mean, we've seen Solo die on its backside. I wasn't that impressed with the last Marvel, the last Avengers film. Maybe it would be nice if we could get back to those kind of mid-budget, intelligently written, not reliant
Those
on a
won't be in the
massive marketing
theaters.
budget.
Those will be on Netflix.
Those will be on Netflix.
Yeah, but those will be on
In
Netflix.
the theaters, you have to have some spectacle, or people aren't going to go, right?
George Lucas said about 10 years ago, he was like, it's not going to be unreasonable to spend $50 for a movie ticket because you're going to be buying the immersive, full-on, surround screen, massive sound system, premium entertainment. He's like, this is what Broadway musicals are now.
And also, increasingly, I mean, our local cinema now has comfy seats, drink service, and food service.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way cinemas are going to go because, it's just like sitting there cramped in, watching a tiny screen at the end of it. I can do that on my laptop.
Yeah.
Why not go to the cinema and have a drink, have a nice meal, and watch the film in full immersive reality?
See, this is where my SF Bay privilege shows because our local and our locally owned theater does like a 1980s series where like every Tuesday night they show a different 1980s film, and they have an MC come out and do trivia, and they give away posters, and they've turned it into a whole social event.
Yeah, how's it in Kentucky? I mean,
in Louisville, so it's the same way. It's interesting because there's a bunch of different kinds of theaters. There's like some theaters have ripped out the 300 seat theaters and put in 75 seats, comfortable seats.
That's what's happened here. All the theaters did.
Pretty much. The ones that have the blockbusters have all done that. You only do.
That's interesting. That's not just here, huh?
Yeah. And then there's other ones that have gone the way of they show more indie films and they make it more of an experience. They bring people in, they bring like guest speakers in. And
I kind of like that.
And then
that's the Alamo
they
Draft
serve like
House
bourbon
model,
there
right?
and
The
stuff,
Castro does that too.
Yeah. So they've definitely you can't find in Louisville any of the like old school theaters.
Thank
just
God.
like
Those were the Cineplexes. That was a terrible way
But
to see
look
a
at how
movie.
people are habituated to watching movies now anyway. I mean, your kids are older than mine, but the first time my daughter realized that in a theater she couldn't just pause the movie, she was like legitimately shocked.
How does she feel? She's 7. How does she feel about going to the movies? Would she rather stay home and watch?
She likes the event around it because she likes that we buy
Get in the car, you get the popcorn.
we walk because we're only a mile and a half from it, but she likes that we get
a mile and a half.
Yeah,
That's
Alameda is a very small island.
That's a long way. You make your daughter walk a mile and a half through the
make it
snow
sound
to
like
go
it's
to
Los Angeles, for goodness sake.
Yeah, but we get the popcorn and shake on the Reese's Pieces and mix it all
But
up.
what is
and
that
she gets
fake
to sit.
butter stuff? Because someone tried to give me a thing of popcorn with fake butter, and it just looked like someone
Our
sneezed
theater
in the popcorn.
Yeah.
has real butter.
Yeah.
At least they call it real butter. I noticed it's real butter registered trademark, and it's bright yellow. But they call it real butter anyway.
But she likes the ritual and she likes the experience behind it.
That's what the theater wants.
My kids don't love going to the movies. Like my wife and I end up going without them most of the time because you want to go see whatever it is with this Black Panther or whatever. They're like,
We'll wait for
I think
video.
Black Panther they did want to go see, and they liked that one. But a lot of the other ones, they're just kind of like, even the cartoons are like, it's kid stuff.
No,
So like the adults go to see The Incredibles. The kids are like, actually, they did want to see that one too.
The thing that
but most of
drives
the
her-
ones they don't.
Yeah.
The thing that drives her bananas is she can't ask questions in the theater because I don't let her talk in the theater.
Right.
But when we watch movies at home,
She can't Snapchat either.
she can talk to us and she can ask things. And I think she likes, I think when she wants to dig into a movie and ask questions, she would prefer to watch it at home. And there have been times when I've seen her in the theater and she's just visibly restraining herself from asking a question.
If you were a fan of Infinity War, you might be in the subreddit. Reddit.com
We've all signed up for it ever since
/r/Thanos did nothing wrong. Josh Brolin, a.k.a. Thanos, has a message for you.
Here we go, Reddit users.
Tomorrow. By the way, notice Josh Brolin, half of his clothes went away when he snapped his fingers.
Let's face it, if you've got a chest like that, I'd be walking around topless most of the time as well. It's not my-
Tomorrow, July 9th, at 9, actually, we don't know what time, sometime during the day, exactly one half of all of the subscribers to the Thanos Has a Message for You, to the Thanos Did Nothing Wrong subreddit will be banned. So everybody needs to sign up. I noticed that the number has gone up a lot since this article in, was it CNET? 557,000 subscribers now. It's more than doubled. And we're going to do more to get that increased.
Yeah.
It's going up
Probably
fast.
doubled again since it was on this show.
Yeah, because
it will in
everybody
the next
wants
48 hours
to be banned by Thanos. So we'll get back to you next time and tell you how that went. I joined
love the
immediately.
graphic.
You have to not only subscribe. Karsten, who somehow knows all this, says you also have to say something. And Karsten told me that what I should say is, I don't feel so good, right? Is that the canonical Thanos?
That is a good thing to say in these situations.
I don't. You guys don't watch sport ball. I don't get the comic book movies. It's just.
No, I mean, it's... The whole Marvel things were sort of... I mean, okay, they were fun for a while, and occasionally they're quite good, but mainly it's kind of brain candy. You know, you go in...
Ant-Man was really good.
Yeah, I hear that's funny.
Well,
I
Ant-Man
developed
it's
a
fun.
very
Did you see the most
weird
recent one? Oh, I
pathology during the big battle scenes. Now, they're so overwhelming. It started with Black Panther. It happened in Infinity War. During those massive, chaotic battle scenes, I fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then
I don't love that
literally-
stuff either.
It's not like, I'm bored. I literally just fall asleep and then wake up when they're over.
So-
and I said, who won?
I podcast on The Incomparable with Jason
Yes.
Snell
Oh, nice.
and that crew. And we're doing a Marvel summer where we rewatch and analyze the movies. And I'm on next week for Avengers 1, Avengers 2, and Captain America Civil War. And it's been really
Can
interesting.
we do a DC summer next year?
If they make decent movies, sure.
And then
Don't hold your breath, but no.
All right, that's it. We're done here, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you so much
It's about to turn ugly.
It's
Kicking off.
Ian Thompson, theregister.co.uk. Always a pleasure to have you.
Great fun to be here as ever.
Thanks for
Leo.
coming by. Schmeiser, tell us the name of that Incomparable. Is it The Incomparable?
It's The Incomparable.
Where can we find that?
You know, I'm Googling it now.
I think it's
I'm usually just on the
theincomparable.com.
Slack. Yeah. Yes, it's theincomparable.com. So
Isn't
I'm there.
Jason in England right now for
Yes.
Michael Hurley's wedding?
Yes. Yes.
So Hurley of the 5x5. No,
Yeah.
is he 5x5? He's
Or-
Relay FM.
Yeah, Relay FM.
Dan is 5x5.
Yeah.
Mike Hurley of the 5x5 network got married. Congratulations, Mike. And a lot of the 5x5 folks are in England right now. Jolly old. And of course, you can find Lisa where she is an editor at itprotoday.com. So nice to have you on.
Thank you. I
Appreciate
love
it.
being on this. Thank you for asking.
Well, we love having you. And same with you, Jason Heiner. What brings you out to the West Coast?
Yeah, just working with my team in San Francisco and spending some quality time working on the next generation of stuff that we're working on.
Like Dan
sharing.
Patterson and the the social media burnout story.
The social media fatigue. Yeah, Dan, that's a good little tease. You heard it here first that Dan and I are working on a little something on that.
And that'll be on Tech Republic or
that will be probably across multiple
Nice.
CBS Interactive brands. To be determined.
Jason is editor-in-chief of Tech Republic. Thank you all for being here. We had a nice studio audience, including poor Logan, who was the butt of a few of our jokes. Thank you, Logan, and family from Galesburg, Illinois, and Patrick from Tampa, and Jacob from Walnut Creek. And if you want to be in our studio audience, we'd be glad to have you. There's no charge. Just email tickets@twit.tv so we know you're coming. We'll put a chair out for you. You can also watch our live stream wherever you are, anywhere in the world, at twit.tv/live. If you want to watch us do Twit, that's 3 p.m. Pacific Sundays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 2200 UTC. If you're in the live stream, watching the live stream, please join us in the chat room, irc.twit.tv. That's where all the cool kids are hanging out, including Jason, who's very brave to go in there. Pruitt was in there. I saw Father Robert Ballas joined us for a moment or two.
I guess one of my highlights is signing into the Twitch channel, and you just like sort of hello, and everyone's very friendly.
They love to see you there. We're actually very proud of our.
Although somebody did insult the food content of Bangers and Mash, and we will be having words on that one later.
Is it the bangers he doesn't like or the mash?
I don't know. The two are just so you can't have one without the other. And
it's like Bubble and Squeak.
Yeah, with a thick covering of onion gravy.
It's like
over the whole
Spotted
thing.
Dick. It's just you
I'm
got to
so
have
hungry
some
right now. Oh my gosh.
If you
there's
can't,
a British pub on the way down to San Francisco.
is there? Which one do you go to?
There's the Mayflower in San Rafael.
That would be a good one to go. You know who works there? Isn't that where I think Kim Schaffer works there? She was bemoaning the fact she had to get up at 6 in the morning for those stupid matches. But she showed me some great video. It would be a great place to watch England.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you can't watch live, maybe you're busy doing something else, don't worry. On-demand audio and video of everything we do on the network is available at our website, twit.tv. And if you don't want to just download it, you can always subscribe. Every podcast application has Twit, of course, one of the oldest podcasts in the world. All you have to do is search for Twit, and you can get this and all of our other shows, and they'll appear on your phone kind of automatically. You can also use those voice-activated devices. In almost every case, all you have to do is say, listen to Twit. Sometimes you have to say, listen to Twit on TuneIn. Depends on the device. But you can hear us on the latest versions of all of our shows on Echo, Google Home, even Siri. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Another Twit is in the can.